You're out for a couple of miles with an ingrown toenail. Ouch! Now, think about those folks who tackle extreme races and marathons. To run their best, they need top-notch training and solid shoes. But there's one more thing: perfectly trimmed toenails. And trust me, keeping those nails in check is an art in itself, because there are many rules on how to do that right. To get ahead of nagging toenail issues, some athletes choose to have their toenails removed altogether, which helps them dodge problems like bruising and ingrown nails. Take Charlotte Vassarelli, an ultra runner who had to say goodbye to both of her big toenails after relentless pain had been affecting her stride. The procedure takes about 45 minutes. A podiatrist will numb the toe, apply a tourniquet, and carefully remove the nail right down to the root. They then use carbolic acid to stop it from growing back. Recovery is pretty swift, but sometimes it can take a few tries to ensure the nail is completely gone. Now, let's say you've accidentally lost your toenail. And since you aren't a professional athlete, you decide to help it grow back. It will take you up to 1.5 years to fully recover. They grow 3 times more slowly than fingernails, only pushing around 1.6 millimeters a month. Plus, the older we get, the slower the process gets. With age, our toenails thicken and round out, so the growth rate slows down. It's not that everybody's feet smell bad, but if you ever notice someone's tootsies stink, here's an explanation for you. Our feet have around 250,000 sweat glands. For comparison, our armpits have 10 times fewer, only around 25,000. However, it's not the sweat that makes the feet smell. Bacteria are in charge of the stench. The primary reason is oftentimes lack of ventilation and fungus that thrive in wet environments, such as sweaty feet. Farts and burps are just a normal part of being human. When we chow down, our small intestines don't get around to digesting all foods perfectly, and gas is a byproduct of a digestive process, when bacteria break down leftovers in your gut. All that gas eventually has to escape, which means, on average, we let out about 12 to 25 farts a day. And don't worry, holding in gas won't affect you seriously. Sure, it can lead to a bit of tummy trouble, but being polite at dinner won't mess with your health in any serious way. Gross as it is, pus actually tells you that your body is doing its job. That gooey stuff, whether it's white, yellow, green, or even brown, is just a buildup of white blood cells fighting off an infection. It means your immune system is kicking in like it should. Of course, if you see pus after major surgery, that's a flag to reach out to your doctor. But for smaller injuries, pus is just your body's way of healing, even if it's super yucky. You can even call it the white cell's precious juice, if you will. Can you give yourself a pinch without feeling anything at all? Go ahead, grab a bit of skin on your elbow and give it a good squeeze. Surprisingly, it won't feel as bad as you'd think. That's because different spots in your skin have different kinds of nerve endings. Your elbow skin is like the superhero of skin. It's tough and has fewer pain receptors. On the flip side, the more delicate parts of your body are packed with nerve endings, making them sensitive and a bit more scream-worthy when you accidentally bump into something. You can munch on anything without actually tasting it. All you have to do is pinch your nose and take a big bite of that not-so-appetizing meal. Bet it doesn't taste like much. The thing is, our taste buds only detect 5 flavors: sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and that savory umami, the flavor you get from various types of meat. Still, it's not your tongue, but your sense of smell that really brings the flavor party to life. If you hold your nose, you cut off the aroma and leave your brain to rely only on those 5 basic tastes. That's a great life hack when you gotta eat something you don't like but have to. If you're snoozing away and someone blows a puff of air at your eyes, they won't even budge. But if you're awake, your eyes are gonna flutter like crazy. So next time you want to test if someone's really sleeping or not, try this little trick. You might notice that one nostril feels more stuffed up when you have a cold, but that's completely normal. It's not unusual for one nostril to be more active while the other takes a little break, and they actually switch roles throughout the day. This is known as the nasal cycle. Typically, one nostril does about 75% of breathing for a couple of hours before the other one takes over. Since this cycle is controlled by your body's nervous system, you can enhance this natural pattern by consciously switching nostrils with each breath, which can help you relax. It might seem a bit goofy at first, but it could be a fun trick to get your kid to try when they need to calm down. The bones in your feet account for about 25% of all the bones in your body. There are 206 bones in total, and each foot has 26 of them, so that's 52 bones for your 2 feet combined. If you do the math, that's roughly 25.24% of your total bone count. Genetically, humans are like 99.9% the same. But not all of our genes are actually human. Out of the roughly 20,000 genes in our DNA, about 8% come from ancient viruses. Plus, another 40% is made up of repetitive sequences that scientists think might also be viral. These viral genes have the ability to move around and replicate themselves, which could be linked to some health conditions. So, turns out you're barely half human when it comes to your genetic makeup. Believe it or not, it's rare, but some people can actually grow teeth in their ovaries. These weird growths are called teratomas, and they can contain all sorts of stuff like hair follicles, skin, muscle, and more. The biggest teratoma ever recorded was a whopping 18 by 10 inches, and it was taken out of a 74-year-old woman. Since the brain doesn't have pain receptors, doctors can do brain surgeries with patients awake and sometimes even chatting. It might sound like a scene from a horror movie, but having patients alert during the procedure actually helps surgeons avoid causing any serious harm. It's a bit unsettling to think about, though. Surprise! Your brain is the fattiest organ in your body. It's about 60% fat, and that's a good thing. Those fatty acids are essential for optimal brain function. Imbalances could up your risk for many health issues. Still, when it comes to having kids, your seemingly fat brain gets smaller as if it's on a diet. Moms and dads experience shrinkage in areas tied to social cues and decision-making. These changes are totally normal and help with parenting. However, no matter if you have kids or not, your brain power still declines by the time you hit 24. Studies show that cognitive speed starts to drop, and you keep losing about 15% every 15 years after. So if you're nearly 40, don't be surprised if things take a bit longer to process. Your ring finger can give away your marital status, but it also has some interesting secrets even before you tie the knot. Back in 1998, evolutionary biologist John Manning found out that if your ring finger is longer, it might mean you had higher levels of prenatal testosterone. Since then, several studies have backed this up, showing that folks with longer ring fingers tend to excel in sports. If you've just checked your palms and your fingers are really long, don't be too fast to judge. Not all scientists agree with that. However, there's some proof that men with longer ring fingers can be a bit angrier than other people. Maybe that's why boxing gloves resemble mittens, to keep you guessing about who the real champ is.
It may seem there's nothing exciting about human bones, unless you find them in your closet. But normally, they're hidden under multiple layers of cells and tissues. They're dense, hard, and unassuming. But are they? Your bones not only protect your internal organs and help you move, but also store fat and minerals. Your blood cells are produced there. Most of the bone tissue isn't even solid. How about going on a journey through your bones to see it with your own eyes? But you'll need to get through several layers of other tissues first. To start with, you'll have to squeeze through the skin, your largest organ. Be careful, it's a labyrinth of hair follicles, sweat glands, nerve endings, and blood vessels where you can easily get lost. Right under the skin, there's a layer of fat. Its main purpose is to keep your body warm. This layer consists of tiny plastic bags, each with a drop of fat, and you may have a tough time navigating around these bubbles. After passing this obstacle course, you're inside your muscles. Their cells, fibrous and long, are always ready to spring into action, helping you transport your body wherever you need. Moving through this layer of tissue is tricky because such cells form bundles, and that's what makes your muscles so strong. Imagine taking a bunch of rubber bands and stretching them. Hard? Your muscle tissue's tough like that. Finally, you reach your destination and see a thin, dense membrane. It's the outer surface of a bone. This layer consists mostly of connective tissue made up of proteins. You also spot numerous blood vessels. Their tiny perpendicular branches sneak deeper into the bone to feed bone cells. You notice that these branches lie in minuscule channels. The inside of the surface layer is filled with stem cells. They're the busiest in childhood and become less active when a person grows up. But if a bone is damaged, they jump back into action and get down to repairing it. Luckily, all your bones are intact. But if there was a fracture, you'd see nearby vessels bleeding and forming a thick lump around the injury. In about 2 days, the area would be surrounded by countless bone-producing cells. They would begin to change, turning into different kinds of cells and forming new bone between the ends of the fractured one. Anyway, it's time to move further toward your bone's hardest part, the outer layer, which is smooth and solid. Because of its density, it's also called compact bone. This kind of bone is the reason why X-rays, which can normally pass through nearly anything, including your body's soft tissues, can hardly get through your bones. This part makes up 80% of your total bone mass. It's incredibly hard to squeeze through the compact bone because it consists of numerous microscopic columns. Inside these cylinders, there are even more bone-producing cells. And in the middle, there's a central canal that connects the bone's nerve fibers and blood vessels. The cylinders go along the bone and help to prevent it from bending or fracturing. Once you get through this super hard layer, the picture around changes dramatically. You're in spongy bone. Boing boing. True to its name, it looks like a sponge or a honeycomb that consists of tiny needles. This bone tissue is way less dense than the compact bone, more flexible, and also much lighter. You notice that the spongy tissue is only near the ends of the bone you're exploring. It means you're inside one of the long bones, whose structure is a bit different from others. In the middle, it has what looks like a tunnel to you. It's made of compact bone that surrounds a cavity filled with a special substance. It's called yellow bone marrow, and it's rich in fat. But it's time to return to the spongy bone. It's mostly found at the ends of long bones, inside vertebrae, and near joints. This sponge-like tissue has open spaces in it. They're filled with red bone marrow, which produces blood cells. While traveling further through the human skeleton, you discover that it consists of 5 types of bones. Long. They're much longer than they are wide. For example, your thigh or upper arm bones and your toes and fingers. Flat. They're thin and slightly curved. These bones are like a layered cake. Spongy bone sandwiched between 2 parallel layers of compact bone. Your ribs and most of the bones in your skull are flat bones. Short bones. Shaped like cubes, they consist of a thin layer of compact bone around spongy insides. Short bones can be found in your wrists and ankles. Sesamoid. These are bones surrounded by tendons, and their main purpose is to hold tendons away from joints. There are numerous bones in your feet, hands, and knees, including the kneecap. These bones got such a name because they look like grains of wheat. Irregular bones. These don't fit into any category because their shape is too complicated. Those are most of the bones of your face and some of your skull. An adult skeleton's made up of 206 bones, and each of them has its own function. Interestingly, people are born with nearly twice as many bones, but as you grow up, these small bones fuse together and form larger ones as a person matures. If one bone's broken, those around it can't work properly either. It usually takes about 12 weeks for a bone to heal. The smallest bone in your body is dozens of times smaller than a penny. This bone's called the stapes and is located in your middle ear. The tiny thing weighs as much as 2 sesame seeds. You get a new skeleton every 10 years, because every year, 10% of your bone's mineral content gets renewed. The average person walks 1 to 3 million steps per year. That's why bones have to be so resilient, otherwise they wouldn't cope with the pressure. Your longest and strongest bone is in your leg. The femur, that's how it's called, runs from your hip to your knee. Even though your teeth are part of the skeletal system, they don't count as bones. More than half of all the bones in your body are in your hands and feet. The only bone in your body that's not connected to another is the tongue bone. It's a V-shaped bone at the base of your tongue that holds it in place. 1% of people are born with a 13th rib. Your bones aren't white. Their color is rather yellow or pinkish from the outside and deep red inside. That's because of the blood vessels in and around them. If you fracture a bone, ow! It'll heal on its own by producing new bone cells. A cast will only help it heal straight. People have known how to deal with broken bones for ages. In ancient Egypt, around 1600 years BCE, they realigned fractured bones and bandaged them with linen. Now, you can't control your bones. You can only tell your muscles attached to your bones where to move. Your bones reach their maximum density at the age of 30. Only 10% of the world's animals, including humans, are vertebrates, meaning they have a skeletal system. A coating of special tissue called cartilage covers a bone and prevents it from rubbing directly against another one. The enamel covering your teeth is even stronger than your bones. It protects the delicate tissue and nerves underneath. The biggest joint in your body is actually your knee. It has to be large to connect 3 equally big bones: the femur, going from your hip to your knee, the kneecap, and the shin bone. Some joints hardly move or don't move whatsoever. Those are between your teeth, inside the skull, and between the first pair of ribs. Bones store minerals, for example, calcium and phosphate. They can be released in your bloodstream when necessary. And finally, the so-called funny bone isn't a bone at all. It's a nerve that runs inside your elbow. When you hit it, you feel sharp, piercing pain. The upper arm bone the nerve runs by is called the humerus. But the pain is clearly not humorous. It can be funny when it happens to someone else, though. Humans have tails. Okay, that sounds weird, I know, but it's true. While our bodies are still forming in the womb, at around day 31 to 35, you can really start to see it. Right now, you have a tail. It's inside you. It's part of your coccyx, to be more precise. If you were to have an X-ray right now and ask the doctor to show you your tail, you'd see some small bony segments at the bottom of your spine. We lost our tails over many millennia of evolution. Imagine if we still had our tails. They'd have to redesign pants. Maybe they'd have a special hole or even a tail pocket. Sitting might be a bit uncomfortable too, to say the least. Our ancestors also had fur. We lost it about 1.2 million years ago. You might be thinking that we still have fur in the form of our body hair, but that's nothing compared to what we used to have. We were thickly furred like chimpanzees and gorillas are now because we needed it to stay warm. You might be annoyed that we lost it if you live somewhere freezing cold like Alaska. Still, you could look at it the other way. Losing our fur lets us enjoy the warm weather a bit more. Living in larger groups meant we shared stuff, and not all of it was positive. It's possible that humans with less hair or fur would get sick less often because they didn't have as many parasites on them, like lice or ticks. This might be the reason why we evolved to lose our fur and become what you see today. Although I have to admit, more body warmth would come in very handy right now. I wouldn't need to keep this blanket on my legs anymore. Oh, not again. Let me just grab a cup of water to make these hiccups go away. Ah, much better. Okay, in reality, it's not that easy to stop hiccuping. But why is it so hard to stop them? Well, it could be because of a strange feature of a past evolution. One theory is that hiccups have no real use anymore, and that we actually only do it because we come from amphibians. They had both lungs and gills at the same time. When they went underwater, the entryway or glottis to their lungs would close. Fast forward to today, and we still have that mechanism of closing the glottis, but it's useless because we don't live in the water. Wow, how unfair. If we have to get frustrated by hiccups, we should at least be able to get some use out of it. Picture this. You start getting the hiccups, and it's like a superpower. You stop breathing through your lungs and start using some gills. That'd be something else, especially for anyone who really likes swimming. Most of our teeth fit pretty much perfectly in our mouth, but there are 4 of them who arrive late to the party and ruin everything. I'm talking about wisdom teeth. They serve no real purpose, but humans and a few primates have them. However, lucky species like the tamarins don't have to worry about them. About 35% of people don't even have wisdom teeth. We might be on our way to losing them altogether once and for all. No more going to the dentist on a mission to remove them, no more headaches from them either. In Ireland, there are a lot of people with red hair, like really a lot, upwards of 30%. That's a lot of redheads out there. This is a result of genetic drift. Genetic drift is when a feature is passed on from your ancestors without really having any purpose. This is exactly why some people have red hair. So, if you have red hair, there's no real reason for it, it's just your ancestors from a past age who passed on to another member of your family and eventually you. And I think red hair is incredibly fun and attractive. Inside our mother's womb, 16 weeks in, we get a powerful urge to grasp the umbilical, and so we do. Monkeys do this too, and there's a reason for it. It's because when they're out in the wild, they need to hold on to their parents' fur. Humans used to do this, but since we lost all of our fur, there's no reason for us to develop this involuntary grasping called the palmar grasp reflex. Open wide and say, "Ah." Good, I can see your tonsils now. But what are they even used for? If we take a good look at it, they actually cause more problems than benefits. Tonsils appeared as a way to protect us from germs and other nasty stuff when we eat food. Still, more often than not, all they do is give us a horrible sore throat. Because of this, it's really common for people to get rid of them. Picture a little pouch. We have one of these inside our body. Not exactly like this, but an organ that sort of resembles a pouch, our appendix. Scientists used to think it was completely useless, but recently found that it might actually have some use. Still, like tonsils, it often causes more problems than benefits. People commonly have their appendix removed and face no real consequences, so it can't be that important. It might have helped our ancestors in the past, but issues with the appendix can be a real big stomachache. Okay, you know how some people can weirdly move their ears? Like this. I can't do it. You might be able to, though. Try it for yourself. Some of us can do this because, like other animals, we have a muscle called the auricular muscle, but it's useless for us. Cats, on the other hand, control their ears pretty well. If only we could learn from them. They look forwards and listen out for a noise behind them without moving their heads, just their ears. That's a pretty cool skill if you ask me. Stretch your arm as far as you can, your hand too. Now connect your thumb with your pinky finger. You might see a line appear on your wrist. What you're seeing is called the palmus longus, and about 90% of the world's population has it. Statistically speaking, it's likely that you have it too. Back then, our ancestors needed every bit of help they could get to climb trees and grasp things. But when we started walking, it made these muscles completely useless. Monkeys, on the other hand, still climb trees easily. They have a muscle in their feet called the plantaris muscle, also known as the monkey muscle. Now, we have this too, except we don't really need it because we don't go around doing any monkey business. Like the palmaris longus, about 10% of people are born with it. Chances are, if monkeys are hanging from a branch, that's the muscle they're using. If you're getting that late-night urge for food at 3 a.m., it's because of hunger. You probably already knew that, but what you don't know is that hunger evolved as a trigger to drive us to search for more food. So, if you still got a few extra pounds you're trying to get rid of, you know what to do. Blame it on evolution. Our hungriest ancestors would have tried harder to look for food and survived to pass that trait on to us. Our love of sugary snacks, like delicious chocolate cookies and milk, is because of evolution too. Our taste buds evolved just as hunger did to help us find food that's beneficial to us. You're out for a walk and get hit with a chilly breeze. You're only wearing a t-shirt, so you decide to go back home. You get into your house with chattering teeth and realize that you've got goosebumps too. We get this from our furry ancestors. When it was cold, they would get goosebumps and their fur would stand on end. This would trap air and insulate their bodies like a nice fluffy coat. We don't have fur anymore, so it doesn't do much. Evolution also explains why you might get goosebumps when you're scared. Picture this, you're a caveman out in the wild when suddenly a tiger jumps out at you. It starts growling at you. No worries, your hair stands on end and you look giant. The big pointy fur intimidates the tiger, so it runs off. Or you have the alternative ending, where the tiger doesn't care and eats you anyway. Maybe that's why we lost the fur, because it didn't work all the time. We don't actually need 5 toes. You're doing the laundry and your hands are full. Oh, you dropped a towel. What do? You pick it up with your feet, of course. This is possible because of our fifth toe, but we could do without it. Since we walk upright and we don't need to go around jumping from branch to branch, this toe is mostly useless. We can walk and even run just fine with 4 toes, maybe even less. So who knows, maybe in the future, humans will only have 4 toes on each foot. It takes about a month for all the skin cells to renew. We shed about 30,000 dead cells every 60 seconds, losing about 9 pounds of skin every year. So, when your friends call you flaky, they're not entirely wrong. Our fingernails grow way faster than toenails. The latter grow almost 4 times slower because they're less frequently damaged than fingernails. Even though we often stumble on them, sudden circulation burst usually doesn't last long. An eyelash is only here to stay for 150 days. The world eyelash record was about 3 inches long. They're also home for tiny mites. We blink about 4,200,000 times a year, at least once every 8 seconds. When we sneeze, the air that we blow speeds out at 100 miles per hour. It could accelerate faster than a brand new Ferrari. Also, you could fracture a rib if you sneeze too hard. Depending on the person, a human produces from half a quart to a full quart of saliva every single day. That's enough saliva to fill several bathtubs in a year. No spit. Saliva acts as a perfect remedy. Wounds in our mouth heal way faster than elsewhere. It also helps to taste food. Our taste buds are ready to perceive it only when it's dissolved in saliva. Now, it may sound crazy, but our bones are stronger than they seem. A cubic inch of human bone can bear about 19,000 pounds, making it 4 times stronger than concrete. The only thing that makes our blood type different is sugar. AB and AB types have 5 types of sugars, while O has only 4, which makes it perfect for donors. Lack of additional sugar doesn't make O type less sweet. In fact, it attracts mosquitoes even more than other blood types. People have only 8 blood types, while cows have 800 and possibly more. Usually, we shed about 50 to 150 hairs a day. An average lifespan of a hair is 5 years, and as soon as an old hair says goodbye to your scalp, a new one starts growing immediately. A human hair is stronger than the same diameter copper wire. A single hair can hold up to 3.4 ounces of weight, and if used properly, a full head can hold up to 18,500 pounds. Our stomach is bigger than it may seem, with a capacity of nearly half a pound when needed, while the average is around 32 ounces. The food is digested within 4 to 6 hours, and it can also dissolve metal, so capacity matters. Lips are much more sensitive than fingers, having around 1 million nerve endings. They are 100 times as sensitive as the tips of fingers. Grooves and furrows make our lip print unique, just like fingerprints are. They also remain unchanged throughout our life. Tongue print is unique too, by the way. So, when are we going to see a tongue print reader? Our belly buttons have an entire zoo in them, with a range of about 70 different bacteria. Some of them can also be found in soil in Japan, and even several kinds of bacteria typical for polar ice caps. Our bodies actually glow. Now, we can't see that with the naked eye though, because the light we emit is 1,000 times less intense than the minimum level we can perceive. Humans are the only living things on Earth that can actually blush, or need to, according to Mark Twain. Blushing is provoked by an adrenaline rush. Carmine, used in blushes and lipsticks, is red dye made up of ground-up beetles. Ew. Your ears keep growing throughout your life. They do sweat too, and earwax is actually the kind of sweat they produce. By the way, your nose never stops growing either. Your heart is the only muscle that never gets tired. The aorta is massive. Its diameter is almost as large as a hose in your garden. We emit about 16 to 48 ounces of gases every day, which is enough to fill a small balloon. Okay, you can insert the appropriate sound effect here. Good job. Fat helps our bodies consume vitamins. Such vitamins as A, D, K, and E can be properly absorbed only when they're dissolved in fat. Our bodies have enough fat to produce 7 bars of soap. Blackheads made of sebum aren't black because they're dirty. They get dark because the debris is oxidized. Some parts of your brain can eat up their own neurons and proteins if you don't provide enough sleep. For example, the hypothalamus that's responsible for your sleep, hunger, and body temperature can do that. You can't inhale and swallow at the same time. I know you've just tried it. That thing called the pharynx is used as an air passage when you inhale or as a food passage when you swallow. When we're awake, our brain may produce enough energy to turn an electric bulb on. It generates about 10 watts of power. You carry enough bacteria in your body to fill a can. Bacteria make about 3 to 5 pounds of your weight, representing 2% of our total weight. Still, most of them are the waste that our body has. The normal body temperature is considered to be at a range of 97 to 99 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest fever ever recorded was a critical 115 degrees. Oh, and that person survived. The pinky finger may be the smallest one, but it's the strongest one too. It has 50% of all strength of your hand. A human has about 20,000 to 25,000 genes. Still, cornflakes have more genes than we do. Luckily, it's about sophistication, not the quality this time. Cornflakes 1, human 0. The iron our bodies have is enough to produce 3 nails, each 1 inch long. The carbon that we have can be used for 900 pencils. Your liver has a superpower of growing back removed parts. It can regenerate to the original size from as little as a quarter of itself. The coolest camera so far has 400 megapixels. A human eye has 576. That's why the sunsets are so much better in real life than in the photos. A roller coaster actually tosses your organs around. When you feel as if your stomach's turning over, it might actually be the case. Even though every person on Earth has an absolutely unique smell, identical twins smell exactly the same. It must be because they have identical genes. Almost half of your taste buds will have gone away by the time you turn 60. Your sense of smell gets less acute as you get older too. When you cough, you release the air at about 60 miles per hour. Turnips can be a great remedy for cough. Just slice them and add some honey on top. A tablespoon 3 times a day is enough. Our skin is the biggest organ that we have. It's also one of the heaviest organs, weighing up to 9 pounds. Hiccups is a 2-step process. First, you inhale a lot of air because of a muscle spasm, and then, bang, the airways are closed, the air is blocked, and the famous sound goes inside. We don't smell when we sleep. That's why it's almost impossible to notice a gas leak at night. While sleeping, we can only rely on sound. Well, actually, we can technically smell while we sleep, but normally a good shower can eliminate that. Out of all the senses we have, smell is the most acute one. We remember 65% of smells after a year, but only 50% of things we've seen over the last 3 weeks. We also get a new nose every 28 days, because nose cells are renewed every 4 weeks. As for taste, again, we mostly rely on our smell, since it helps us perceive up to 95% of the flavor. Without our smell sense, it'd be hard to tell an apple from a turnip. While a bunch of flowers may be fragrant for you, there are people who suffer from cacosmia. They always seem to smell something unpleasant, even if there's nothing like that around. We need ears, not only for hearing, but for balance too. Our vestibular system occupies the inner ear. Canals in your inner ear contain fluid and tiny hair-like sensors helping you keep your balance. If you have red eyes in a photo, blame it on bouncing light. The flash jumps off the blood vessels at the back of your eyes, creating that effect. All the bones in your body are connected to each other except for the hyoid. This bone serves as a support to your tongue, and it's one of the rarest bones to break. No human being has truly black eyes. Well, unless you get in a fight, but let's play nice, okay? Some of us do have a lot of melanin, so the eye might appear almost pitch black. But a lot depends on lighting conditions. In fact, those who are believed to have black eyes just have a really dark brown eye color. An eyelash is here to stay for 150 days only. The world record for longest eyelash was about 3 inches. You could whip yourself with that. Eyelashes are also home for tiny mites. The world's most common eye color is brown. There are loads of different shades of brown, but the fun thing is they're actually blue underneath. All blue-eyed people have the same ancestor as every other blue-eyed person in the world. Tears aren't just salty water. They're made of lipids, which is basically oil, water, and mucus. The salinity makes our tears antibacterial. The coolest camera so far has 200 megapixels. The human eye has 576 megapixels. That's why sunsets are so much better in real life than in photos. We blink about 4,200,000 times a year, at least once every 8 seconds. It would be cool if we were given a cent every time we blink. We would make more than $100 per day. It takes about a month for all your skin cells to renew. We shed about 30,000 dead cells every 60 seconds, losing about 8 pounds of skin each year. Our fingernails grow way faster than toenails. Toenails grow almost 4 times slower because they accrue less damage than fingernails. Even though we often stub our toes, a sudden circulation burst doesn't usually last long. A human produces from half a quart to 1 liter of saliva every day, depending on the person. That's enough saliva in a year to fill a bathtub. No spit. Saliva acts as a perfect remedy. Wounds in our mouth heal way faster than everywhere else. It also helps to taste food. Our taste buds are ready to perceive food only when it's dissolved by saliva. It may sound incredible, but our bones are stronger than they may seem. A cubic inch of human bone can bear about 19,000 pounds, making it 4 times stronger than concrete. Wait, is that where the term blockhead came from? The only thing that makes our blood types different is sugar. AB and AB types have sugars, while O has none, making it perfect for donors. No sugar doesn't make O type less sweet. In fact, it attracts mosquitoes even more than other blood types. People have only 8 blood types, while cows have 800 and possibly more. Holy cow! Usually, we shed about 50 to 150 hairs a day. An average lifespan of a hair is 5 years, and as soon as an old hair says goodbye to your scalp, a new one starts growing immediately. Human hair is stronger than the same diameter copper wire. A single strand can hold up to 3.4 ounces of weight, and if used properly, a full head can hold up to 18,500 pounds. Our stomach is bigger than it may seem, with a capacity of nearly half a pound in extreme conditions. The average is around 32 ounces. Food is digested within 4 to 6 hours, and it can also dissolve metal, so capacity matters. Lips are much more sensitive than fingers, having around 1 million nerve endings. That makes them 100 times as sensitive as fingertips. So, doing the math, I'm guessing that kissing is 100 times better than holding hands. Maybe? Grooves and furrows make our lip print unique, just like fingerprints. They also remain unchanged throughout our life. Your tongue print is unique too, by the way. Our belly buttons have an entire zoo in them, with a range of about 70 different bacteria. Some of them can also be found in soil in Japan, and even bacteria typically found at the polar ice caps. Yeah, right there, your belly button. Our bodies actually glow. Now, we can't see it with our regular eyesight because the light we emit is 1,000 times less intense than the minimum level we can perceive. So, you'll have to trust me on this one. Humans are the only living things on Earth that can blush. It's provoked by an adrenaline rush. Carmine, used in blushes and lipsticks, is a red dye made of ground-up beetles. Ugh. Our eyes keep growing throughout our lives. They sweat too, and earwax is actually a kind of sweat they produce. By the way, the nose never stops growing either, especially when you're lying. The heart is the only muscle that never gets tired. The aorta is massive. Its diameter is almost as large as a hose in your garden. We emit about 500 to 1500 milliliters of gases every day, which is enough to fill a small balloon. Hey, get the neighborhood together and fill up a blimp. It's worth a shot. Fat helps our bodies consume vitamins. Vitamins A, D, K, and E will absorb better when consumed with fat. Our bodies have enough fat to produce 7 bars of soap. Some parts of the brain can self-cannibalize, eating its own neurons and proteins if you don't provide them with enough nutrients. For example, the hypothalamus responsible for your sleep, hunger, and body temperature can do so. Believe it or not, you can't inhale and swallow at the same time. I know, you just tried. The pharynx is used as an air passage when you inhale or as a food passage when you swallow. If you flatten all the wrinkles that your brain has, it would look like a pillowcase. When we're awake, our brain may produce enough energy to power an electric bulb. It has 10 watts of power. In your body, you carry enough bacteria to fill a can. Bacteria makes about 3 to 5 pounds of your weight, representing 2% of our total weight. Still, most of them are waste products. The average body temperature is a range of 97 to 99 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest fever ever recorded was a critical 115 degrees. A pinky finger may be the smallest one, but it's the strongest one too. 50% of your hand strength comes from your pinky. A human being has about 20,000 to 25,000 genes. Seems impressive, right? Still, cornflakes have more genes than we do. Cornflakes 1, human 0. Luckily, it's about sophistication, not the quantity this time. We consist of many chemical elements, including iron. The iron in our bodies is enough to produce 3 nails, each 1 inch long. The carbon in our bodies can be used for 900 pencils. Our liver has a superpower of regenerating if part of it was removed. It can grow back to the size that your body needs. A roller coaster actually tosses your organs around. When you feel like your stomach's falling down, it's actually falling inside your body. Even though people have an absolute unique smell, identical twins smell almost the same. It must be because they have identical genes. Almost half of your taste buds will have gone away by the time you turn 60. So, maybe you'll finally start eating that broccoli. Your sense of smell gets less acute as you get older, too. When you cough, you release the air at about 60 miles per hour. Our skin is the biggest organ we have. It's also one of the most massive organs, weighing up to 9 pounds. If we could spread out all the skin we have, it would cover about 20 square feet. Hiccups is a 2-step process. First, you suck in a lot of air because of a muscle spasm, and then, bang, the airways are closed, the air is blocked, and the famous sound goes inside. We don't smell when we sleep. That's why it's almost impossible to notice a gas leak at night. While sleeping, we can rely only on sound because sleep can be disrupted by noise. Out of all the senses, smell is the most acute, except if you're sleeping. We remember 65% of odors after a year, but only 50% of what we've seen over the last 3 weeks. We also get a new nose every 28 days, because the nose cells are renewed every 4 weeks. As for taste, again, we mostly rely on our sense of smell, since it helps us perceive up to 95% of the flavor. Without smell, it'd be hard to tell an apple from a turnip. Well, a bunch of flowers may be fragrant for you. Some people suffer from cacosmia. They perceive all scents as something odorous. We need ears, not only for hearing, but for balance too. Our vestibular system occupies the inner ear. Canals in your inner ear contain fluid and tiny sensor hairs that help you keep your balance. If you have red eyes in a photo, blame it on bouncing light. The flash jumps off the capillaries in your eyes, creating that effect. Finally, all the bones in our body are connected to each other except for the hyoid. This bone serves as a support to your tongue, and it's one of the rarest bones to break. Well, here's some facts you'll find hard to digest. Your stomach has a pretty incredible capacity, being able to hold up to half a gallon of liquids. That's a whole large bottle of Coke. It's pretty hard to estimate how much hard food you can eat because it's processed with your teeth before it gets to your stomach. There's definitely not enough room for a turkey, but a good-sized chicken would probably fit in it. If you were asked where your stomach was, you would probably point to your tummy. Sorry, that's wrong. It's actually up here, hidden in between your ribs. Scientists believe that the appendix will disappear eventually. Nobody really knows why we need it, but some researchers claim it might have existed to help our ancestors digest tree bark. Because it's no longer part of our daily diet, the appendix isn't necessary and can disappear from our bodies without any consequences. The appendix isn't the only obsolete part of our body. Wisdom teeth aren't that useful either. Yeah, they used to come in handy whenever our ancestors lost some of their teeth, but the only thing they help us lose now is the money we spend extracting them. Almost all of our body is covered with hairs, even if we don't notice them. They grow even in the belly button. Their purpose is to catch lint. Check it out. See? Your liver acts as your own personal bodyguard, protecting you from toxins and many other things you don't want hanging around in your body. It's also pretty indestructible and can even regenerate. Only about 43% of you is actually you. Over 50% of the cells in your body belong to tiny little creatures that mainly live in your gut. Still, even though your own cells are fewer than microbial ones, there are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. See, you're not alone. With this in mind, your own genes are less than half of what you really consist of. If you take all the microbes dwelling within your body and count their genes, you'll find between 2 to 20 million. If you sleep, it doesn't mean all of your body sleeps. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take a lot of time. The nose definitely gets a good rest while you're sleeping. Amazingly, your sense of smell basically deactivates at night. You wouldn't even be bothered if there was a really terrible smell in your bedroom. No comment. The nose is probably one of the most underappreciated parts of the body. We wouldn't even be able to enjoy eating without it. About 80% of the taste of any food is thanks to the nose and its ability to recognize odors. If you hold your nose while eating, you will taste almost nothing. With no sense of smell, you're likely to recognize food mostly by texture, so an onion might seem no different than a big refreshing apple. Yeah, try that and leave me a comment on how that goes. Scientists used to believe we could distinguish about 10,000 smells, but they were wrong. Recent research showed that people are actually able to distinguish between more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. Your nose just doesn't help you breathe and catch odors, it filters the air for sensitive throats and lungs. If we inhale dry air, the nose moistens it, cools it, and heats it if it's necessary. Also, the nose cleans the air of dirt. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at 30, and it starts shrinking by the age of 40. It happens to everyone and doesn't affect your mental strength in any way. Our brain can store only 7 bits in its short-term memory. Don't even try to compare your brain with a phone capacity, not even the one you had back in 2005. That's why you can't even learn a phone number by heart. Our short-term memory functions just like a chalkboard. You can get some information, but sooner or later, you run out of space. To check your working memory capacity, try this test. Ask a friend to write a list of 10 words and read it to you. Most people recall 7 or fewer items from that list. Your RAM, or working memory, is an essential thing that we need to perform almost any everyday activity, including basic conversations, surfing the net, and even petting your dog. Our strongest and emotional memories are often fake. The central memory gives us the confidence to believe that we remember everything, even though most of the details are made up in our heads. Not only your brain shrinks as you get older, you too shrink dramatically. The bones get more brittle, the backbone gets compressed. A similar thing happens when you rest at night. Your bones kind of relax too. Because of this, you wake up taller in the mornings than you are at the end of the day. Among mammals, only humans can walk on two legs for their entire lives. You might think that kangaroos or gorillas move in the same way, but kangaroos use their tail as a third leg, and gorillas use their long arms to keep balance. Your bones take part in metabolism too. Since they mostly consist of calcium, when there's not enough of this element in your blood, bones start shedding it into the bloodstream, balancing your body. The same reaction works in reverse too. When there's too much calcium in your blood, it goes into the bones to be stored for later. The only bone to have a sense of humor in your body is inside your upper arm. That's why it's called the humerus. Okay, I made that one up. Moving along. The only bones that never grow are found in our ears. We can hear thanks to these tiny bones because they have adapted to transmit sound vibrations. Doctors call them the oscular chain. One of these hearing bones, the stapes, is the smallest bone in your entire body. It's no larger than a grain of rice. Our height, shape of our body, and skin color depend a lot on where our ancestors used to live, but we can adapt to new conditions even within our own lifespan. For example, if you move from plains to the mountains, you'll eventually develop more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. And naturally, if you move from a colder climate to a hotter and sunnier one, your skin will get darker to adapt. Our lifespan is programmed within our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. That means if we could find a way to trick ourselves into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. Body fat isn't just a nuisance. It acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might protect your vitals from irreparable damage. Heads up! Your skull isn't a single bone. It actually consists of 28 different bones, many of which are fused together to protect your brain. The mandible, or the lower jaw, is the only skull bone that isn't fixed to the bone around it. It's attached with connective tissues and muscles. This is what makes it so mobile. You can move it in any direction you like. Hey, you can actually masticate with your mandible, another word for chewing. You see, the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs, they're in your head. The masseter is the main muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you chew your food. Now, we've got two really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection, so the reflex that protects them needs to be as fast as lightning. These muscles can shut the eyelids in less than 1/10 of a second. People with double-jointed thumbs can bend them backward. It looks super unusual and very few people can do it. Still, it's totally okay. Even though it looks painful, it actually doesn't hurt at all for someone with a double-jointed thumb. Now, we recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees, because every single person has slight vision differences. But it's about 1 million combinations on average. You see?
You wake up one morning, and while you're brushing your teeth, you notice a lump on the inside of your mouth, under your tongue. Immediately, you're concerned. You've never noticed this before? But not to worry. It's just torus mandibularis, a simple bony growth on the mandible of your mouth. If you have this extra bit of bone, you are part of the 40% of people with this anomaly. Although it can be more common depending on where you're from. For example, in the USA, this only occurs in 10% of the population. Bones are significant pieces within our bodies. We have 206 of them altogether. But some people may have an extra bone that they weren't expecting. We all have 12 pairs of ribs, equaling to 24 in total. However, 0.5% of people may have 25. The 25th is known as a cervical rib. Present from birth, it grows from the base of the neck, just above the collarbone. It can be on either side, as a fully formed rib, or just a thin strand of tissue fibers. There are some parts of our body that have remained with us throughout our evolution as a species, and some of us no longer share that same physical trait. The palmaris longus is a small tendon located in your wrist. By pressing the pads of your fourth finger and thumb, then clenching your wrist, the inside of your wrist will show the palmaris longus popping out. If this isn't visible, then you are part of a relatively small percentage that no longer possesses it. Lacking it has no effects on the strength of your grip, but being absent does give a decreased pinch strength in the fourth and fifth finger. It's believed that this muscle was actively used sometime in the evolutionary process of our species. It hasn't affected our bodies in any way, and it's merely a trait that some of us continue to have. It's also not dependent on either hand, regardless of which hand is dominant. Which hand do you use more often? If you're left-handed, you're part of the 10% club. And if you're ambidextrous, you're within the 1% to use both of your hands dominantly. Most ambidextrous people initially only use their left hand. Ambidexterity and left-handedness share the indication that they are using both sides of the brain. Right-handed people are generally dominant only to the left side of the brain. We all have tailbones, a reminder of our long story of evolution. We stopped using our tails around 25 million years ago. Although, while we are still growing as embryos, we go through the process of growing a tail, and after about 8 weeks, we lose it completely. There are some cases of humans being born with a tail. There are about 25 confirmed cases known to scientists. Those born with tails, though, won't have any real benefit, other than what the tailbone does for balance anyway. The tails have no function other than physically being there, as they have no bones. The tails only consist of nerves, vessels, and muscles. Do you find that you are a picky eater? Do you think that coriander tastes like soap? Or you can't stand pineapple on pizza? This may be due to what kind of taster you are. Up to 30% of people are considered super tasters and will experience different levels of enjoyment or disappointment from their foods. Food that is bitter to the super taster will likely be sweet to average tasters, who make up 40% of people. There are also 30% of people who are non-tasters and won't find anything too exciting. Do you have the ability to identify musical notes? About 1 in 10,000 people can flawlessly distinguish perfect pitch naturally. Although this doesn't necessarily mean that they will be the next big pop star. They're just able to easily identify a specific musical note upon listening to it. Our eye colors are so diverse. The difference in light exposure to eyes throughout the world determines how much melanin is produced, which helps create many different shades of color. Since migration has become more common over the past 100 years, the variations of shades of color are numerous. Your genes, of course, also playing a huge part. We could list hundreds of different shades of eye color to show how many variations there are, but we'll limit the distinct categories down to 6 main color groups to keep this brief. The vast majority of people have brown eyes. About 79% of the world's population share this eye color. Once, all humans only had the brown pigmentation, until around 6 to 10,000 years ago, when humans migrated to Northern Europe. A mutation occurred, helping the eyes to adapt to the change of light. Blue eyes became the most common of the mutated coloration, and all of them today can be traced back to one ancestor from Europe. Today, blue eyes make up around 10% of the human population. Amber and hazel eyes each take up 5% respectively. Gray eyes are up to 3%, and the rarest of eye colors are green ones, consisting of only 2%. Rarer still is heterochromia iridum, where both eyes are of different colors. It's inherited and also affected by other genetic factors. Only 1% of the human population have this incredibly rare attribute. Although blue eyes have become more common, they're only more prominent within areas where people contribute similar variants of genes, since blue eyes are a recessive trait, just like red hair, which only occurs within up to 2% of the population. If you have red hair and blue eyes, you will be part of the smallest percentile for hair and eye variety that makes up only 0.17% of the human population. Although green, gray, and hazel eyes are less abundant than blue, their genes are more dominant. So, within the small pool of redheads, blue eyes are less likely to occur. The melanin that has helped mutate eye colors can also have other effects on the human body. A genetic mutation that affects the melanin occurs in 0.005% of people in the USA, creating albinism. The occurrence differs in many ways throughout the world, the same as the effects with eyes. In albinism, the pigment production is altered to distribute major cells that affect the coloring of the skin, the hair, and the eyes. Most people with albinism will have snow-white skin, snow-white hair, and their eyes are a pale blue-pinkish color, the pupil itself being red. The redness comes from the light reflecting off the vessels in the retina. There is another form of albinism which has a smaller amount of pigmentation, and the shade of skin and hair are slightly darker. Albinism occurs not only in humans, but practically all mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. Do you have a small hole at the front of your ear above the ear canal? This is the preauricular pit. During the first 6 weeks of a child's development, long before being born, the auricle, which is the external part of your ear, will develop. The preauricular pit forms when the auricle doesn't fully fuse. This occurs within less than 1% of humans. Although there's speculation that having this little hole is the remnant of gills that we once had from our seafaring ancestors, there's nothing solid to confirm this theory. There are some unique things we have that give us an advantage in everyday life. Some people carry a gene mutation of the DEC2 gene, also known in proper English as familial natural short sleepers. Essentially, it means people within this 1% only require about 6 hours of sleep each day. Most people will probably feel burned out after a day of this, but those lucky enough to be within this 1% will be sure to make the most out of their day. Have you ever looked at a picture and noticed that the color of something was different to what someone else can see? It may be that you have a rare ability to see more colors than everyone else, possibly seeing 100 million different kinds of shades. If you do, you're part of the rare group of people called tetrachromats, who have 4 cone cells in their eyes, unlike everyone else who has 3, and are identified as a trichromat. Studies are varied on who is part of this rare ocular phenomenon, though it's more prominent in females. It's suggested that up to 15% of women have this rare capability. Incredibly, it's an ability also shared with some species of birds, insects, fish, and other mammals.
Now, nobody really knows why we need the appendix, but it's always at the back of the book. Wait, wrong appendix. Some researchers claim the human appendix helped our ancestors process the tree bark and whatever they were eating at that time. As we have a way more balanced diet now, the appendix can disappear from our bodies without any consequences. Another purposeless thing in our bodies is the wisdom teeth. Yeah, they used to come in handy when dentists didn't exist, but now we can ideally make do without them. Your brain will grow by roughly 2% if you venture into space. Under normal gravity, it's thought that fluid in the brain naturally moves downwards when we stand upright. But there is evidence that microgravity prevents this, resulting in fluid accumulation in the brain and skull. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at age 30, and it starts shrinking at 40. It happens to everyone, so you just have to go with it and keep your brain busy and nimble. If you stare into your eyes in the mirror, you'll see a small pink circle settled in the corner of your eye. This is your third eyelid, useless for us but valuable for animals, like birds, to keep dust and scattered debris from getting into their eyes. This might sound familiar to you if you've heard of natural selection. In short, natural selection keeps body parts throughout generations, but some of them are harmful, so they're phased out in the next generation, and others that aren't staying, just like the third eyelid. Not only your brain shrinks as you get older, you too shrink dramatically. The bones get more brittle, the backbone gets compressed. It works vice versa too. When you rest at night, your bones kind of relax too, so you wake up taller than when you went to bed last night. Our ears help us keep the balance, so hearing isn't their only duty. Our vestibular system occupies the inner ear. Canals in your inner ear contain fluid and tiny sensors that look somewhat like hairs, helping you keep your balance. As for hairs, only a few body parts aren't covered with them. These are palms, the soles of the feet, and lips. Hairs grow even in the belly button. Their purpose is to catch lint. Mine does a great job. And not only lint, our belly buttons have an entire animal encyclopedia in them, with a range of about 70 different bacteria. Some of them can also be found in soil in Japan, and even some bacteria typical for polar ice caps. See, you have a whole naval expedition going on and didn't even know it. Only about 43% of you is you. You're over 50% tiny little creatures that mainly live in your gut and other body parts without ever leaving it. Still, even though your cells are fewer than microbial ones, there are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. With this in mind, your genes are less than half of what you consist of. If you take all the microbes dwelling within your body and count their genes, it'll be anywhere from 2 to 20 million genes and their combinations. If you sleep, and I recommend that you do, it doesn't mean all of your body sleeps. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take time. One thing that indeed rests while you're sleeping is your nose. You won't smell anything nasty in your sleep. The thing is that your sense of smell deactivates at night. If there's some terrible smell in your bedroom, you won't even be bothered. Scientists used to believe we could distinguish around 10,000 smells. Nope. Recent research showed that people could indicate more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and odors can even evoke some distant memories. Meanwhile, our strongest and most emotional memories are usually fake. It's the way the central memory works. It gives us the confidence to believe everything we remember is real, even though we should be confident about fewer details. Now, you don't mind if I call you a mammal, do you? Well, among us mammals, only humans can always walk on 2 hind limbs and keep that posture for their entire lives. You may want to say that kangaroos or gorillas move in the same way, but kangaroos use their tail as a third leg, and gorillas use the help of their long arms to keep balance. Your bones take part in metabolism too. Since they mainly consist of calcium, when there's not enough of this element in your blood, bones start shedding it into the bloodstream, balancing your body. And vice versa, when there's too much calcium in your blood, it goes into the bones to be stored for later. Our height, shape of our body, and skin color depend a lot on where our ancestors used to live, but we can adapt to new conditions even within our lifespan. For example, if you move from the plains to the mountains, you'll eventually develop more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. And naturally, if you drive from a colder climate to a hotter and sunnier one, your skin will change pigmentation slightly to adapt. Our lifespan is programmed within our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. If we find a way to trick ourselves into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. But we'd be a huge mass of wrinkles by then. Body fat acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might as well protect those organs from serious damage. Your skull isn't a single bone. It consists of 22 different bones, many of which are fused to protect your brain. The mandible, or the lower jaw, is the only skull bone that's only attached to your head with connective tissues and muscles. This is what makes it so mobile. You can move it in any direction you like. And the smallest bone in your whole body is inside your ear. It's called the stapes, and it's no larger than a grain of rice. Some of the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs, they're in your head. The masseter is the primary muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you to chew your food. We've got two really fast muscles. They control the eyelids opening. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection. So, when the reflex is triggered, these muscles shut the eyes within less than a tenth of a second. We recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees because every single person has slight vision differences, but it's about 1 million combinations on average. Your stomach has an impressive capacity, holding up to a half a gallon of liquids, a whole large bottle of Coke. It's pretty hard to estimate how much hard food you can squeeze into your stomach, since the food is processed with your teeth before it gets down there. There's not enough room for a whole turkey, but who knows, probably a good-sized chicken might fit it. And hey, like my grandmother said, there's always room for ice cream. Now, show me where your stomach with all that cola, chicken, and ice cream is. If you're pointing at your tummy, nope, it's up there, hidden in between your ribs. Your tummy is full of intestines.
Not even twins have tongue prints that are alike. The tongue is a movable and strong set of muscles that almost never gets tired. It contains anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 taste buds. Those little white and pink bumps on your tongue aren't taste buds, but each of them does have a bunch of them inside its surface tissue. Evolution gave us taste buds so that we can stay alive. For instance, sour and bitter flavors can be a sign that you may be eating rotten food or poisonous plants. The back of the tongue is more sensitive when it comes to bitter flavors, which is why we can spit out bad food before we swallow it. Salty and sweet tastes tell us if foods are rich in nutrients. By the time they're 60, the majority of people lose half their taste buds. Yes, your tongue is pretty cool, and its prints can be used for biometric authentication, just like fingerprints. Each of us have a different and unique tongue print. So, if you don't want to reveal your secret identity, keep your tongue hidden. That would be funny. Why do we even have fingerprints? Scientists had a lot of different theories, but they now believe it's because having them allows skin to stretch more easily. That prevents blisters, protects the skin from damage, and may improve our sense of touch. Humans are not the only ones with unique fingerprints. Koalas have them too. Only around 7% of people are left-handed. Left-handed people mostly chew food on the left side of their mouth, while right-handed people do so on the right. We lose almost 9 pounds of skin cells every year. Don't worry, we replace them quickly. We produce more cells than there are people living in the United States every 15 seconds. Our body is always regenerating, and we replace our skin hundreds of times during one lifetime. Yep, our body regenerates, except for our teeth. They're the only part of the body that can't heal itself. We have teeth that are similar to a shark's. Their teeth also have a thing called dentin inside of them, and theirs are just as strong as ours. Of course, theirs are sharper and bigger, but still. Teeth are part of the human skeleton, but they're not considered bones. You'll spend approximately 38 days of your life brushing your teeth. And guess what? It's possible to brush them too much. That can make them more sensitive because it wears down the natural enamel. Your left and right lungs are not the same size. The right one is bigger because the left shares its real estate with your heart. Hiccups are something almost all mammals go through from time to time, not just humans. The record was set by a man named Charles Osborne. He couldn't stop hiccuping for 68 years. Guess no one told him about the whole eating sugar trick. There's only one part of your body that doesn't get a regular delivery of blood, your corneas. They get oxygen directly from the air. Our eyes can differentiate between 10 million different colors. The muscles that help our eyes focus on something make around 100,000 movements a day. If you wanted to make your leg muscles do the same amount of work, you'd need to take a long walk, at least 50 miles. We can't all see infrared light or ultraviolet radiation. Only 1% of us can do that. And if you can see one of those, it doesn't necessarily mean you can see the other. Research says blue-eyed people all over the world may be related, or at least share a very distant ancestor. Scientists looked at blue-eyed individuals from Turkey, India, Jordan, and Scandinavia. They all had the same eye color gene sequences. They believe this trait comes from one blue-eyed person whose genes mutated around 10,000 years ago. Before that, people's eyes were just all different shades of brown. People with blue eyes are generally a bit more sensitive to pain than individuals with other eye colors. We blink about 20 times in 1 minute, which means we do it more than 10 million times a year. That thing about being similar to sharks, well, that goes for our eyes too. If part of your eye gets damaged, you can replace it with a shark's. We can't sneeze with our eyes open. Try it. It's really hard to override your built-in reflexes. Eyelashes have their own life too. One single lash lives for about 150 days before falling out. We all get goosebumps when we hear good news, our favorite song, or when it's ridiculously cold in the frozen food aisle. It's a reflex we got from our ancestors. It happens when you release adrenaline. It makes your hair stand on end and helps you look more imposing. Rawr! Scary, huh? The human brain has 100 billion neurons and a memory capacity that's equal to more than 4 terabytes, which is a lot. Your brain uses more than a quarter of all the oxygen your lungs take in, and it's mostly water, more than 75%. Stay hydrated, people. It's not true that humans use only 10% of their brain. We use much more than that, even when we're asleep. Most of our brain is constantly active. We just don't use all parts of it at the same time. Out of all the species out there, humans are the only ones who can blush. It comes from a rush of adrenaline. When you see your face turn red, know that your stomach is turning red too. How weird is that? When you crack your knuckles, the sound you're hearing is tiny gas bubbles being released. There are pockets of gas trapped between your joints, so when you stretch them, they make a popping noise. Oh, so satisfying. We use 43 muscles when we frown, but only 17 when we smile. Though scientists are still arguing over this one. Say cheese. An average person eats around 33 tons of food over a lifetime. That's 6 elephants worth. We breathe in approximately 2,900 gallons of air on a daily basis, but we can't swallow and breathe at the same time. Most people need about 7 minutes to fall asleep, and we're just about the only living creatures that sleep on our backs. Randy Gardner decided to set the record for the longest period without sleep. The year was 1964, and he stayed awake for 11 days. That's 264 hours. Guess he had pretty noisy neighbors. Amongst all animals, humans are the only ones with chins. When you're thirsty, it means the water loss you're experiencing is equal to 1% of your total body weight. If it goes past 5%, you might even faint. During your lifespan, your body goes from having 300 bones to 206. Over half of all your bones are in your feet, your ankles, hands, and wrists. The biggest human bone is the thigh bone, and the smallest one is called the stirrup bone. It's inside your eardrum. Your nose can recognize 1 trillion different scents and remember 50,000 of them. Also, women are better smellers than men, and our sense of smell is 10,000 times more sensitive than our sense of taste. Our lungs have a surface area that's almost equal to the area of an entire tennis court. So, what's up with that feeling you get when you're going over a crest on a roller coaster and your stomach jumps up into your throat? Well, the seatbelt keeps your body in place, but your stomach, intestines, and smaller internal organs get a little airtime. It doesn't do you any harm, but your nerves can't figure out what's going on. They really think your stomach has jumped all the way into your throat. We're all taller in the morning because throughout the day, the cartilage between our bones gets compressed. That makes us around 1 fingernail shorter by the end of each day. Nose and ears, parts of our body that never stop growing. It's mostly thanks to gravity. The veins and arteries inside your body are long enough to make 2 trips around the world. Blood makes up about 8% of your body weight. When you listen to music, your heartbeat syncs with the general vibe of the song. So choose wisely. Your skin is the biggest organ you have. It counts for about 15% of your total weight. Get this, you can burn more calories during sleep than when watching TV. Then what about sleeping while the TV's still on?
Yep, your brain will grow by roughly 2% if you venture into space. Under normal gravity, it is thought that fluid in the brain naturally moves downwards when we stand upright. But there is evidence that lack of gravity prevents this, which is why fluid accumulates in the brain and skull. While a bunch of flowers may be fragrant for you, there are people with cacosmia who would beg to differ. They perceive all the smells out there as something odorous. Well, that stinks. Speaking of which, out of all the senses we have, smell is the most acute one. We remember 65% of smells after a year, but only 50% of what we've seen over the last 3 weeks. We also get a new nose every 28 days, because the nose cells are renewed every 4 weeks. We don't smell when we sleep. Well, of course, unless you haven't bathed in a while. Your sense of smell goes to sleep when you do, which is why it's almost impossible to notice a gas leak at night. While sleeping, we rely only on sound because the sleep can be disrupted by noise. Almost half of your taste buds will have gone away by the time you turn 60. So maybe you will finally start eating those broccoli. Your sense of smell gets less acute as you get older as well. As for taste again, we mostly rely on our smell since it helps us perceive up to 95% of the flavor. Without the sense of smell, it'd be hard to tell an apple from a turnip. Now, when you cough, you release the air at about 60 miles per hour, so mind the speed limit. Hiccups is a 2-step process. First, you draw in a lot of air because of a muscle spasm, and then bang! The airways are closed, the air is blocked, and the famous sound goes outside. We need ears, not only for hearing but for balance too. Our vestibular system occupies the inner ear. Canals in your inner ear contain fluid and tiny sensors helping you keep the balance. By the way, ears have bones. These are also the only bones that never grow. We can hear thanks to these little guys since they transmit sound vibrations. Doctors call them oscular chain, and it's made up of malleus, incus, and stapes, nicknamed hammer, anvil, and stirrup, which are integral parts of the middle ear. Our ears keep growing throughout our lives. They sweat too, and earwax is actually a kind of sweat they produce. Oh, by the way, the nose never stops growing either, perhaps from all the lies. Your heart is the only muscle that never gets tired. The aorta is massive. Its diameter is almost as large as a hose in your garden. All the bones in our body are connected to each other except for the hyoid, which doesn't articulate with the other bones. This bone serves as support to your tongue, and it's one of the rarest bones to break. If you have red eyes in a photo, blame it on bouncing light. The flash jumps off the capillaries in your retina, creating that effect. As for eyes, the coolest camera so far has 200 megapixels. The human eye has 576. That's why sunsets are so much better in real life than in photos. A roller coaster actually tosses your organs around. When you feel like your stomach's falling down, it's really flipping inside your body. Lips are much more sensitive than fingers, having around 1 million nerve endings. They are 100 times as sensitive as the tips of the fingers. Grooves and furrows make our lip print unique, just like fingerprints are. They also remain unchanged throughout our life. Oh, the tongue print is unique too, by the way. Even though all the people on Earth have an absolutely unique smell, identical twins smell exactly the same. It must be because they have identical genes. Usually, we shed about 50 to 150 hairs a day. An average lifespan for hair is 5 years, and as soon as an old hair says goodbye to your scalp, a new one starts growing immediately. In your body, you carry enough bacteria to fill a can. Bacteria makes about 3 to 5 pounds of your weight, representing 2% of your total weight. Still, most of them are the waste that our body has. A human being has about 20,000 to 25,000 genes. Seems impressive, right? Well, cornflakes have more genes than we do. Luckily, it's about sophistication, not the quantity. Anyway, cornflakes 1, humans 0. We consist of many chemical elements, including iron. The iron in our bodies is enough to produce 3 nails, each 1 inch long. The carbon that we have can be used for 900 pencils. Our feathers can be used to make quill pens. Wait, that's birds. Never mind. Our liver has a superpower of regenerating if part of it was removed. It can grow back to the size that your body needs. Fat helps our bodies consume vitamins. Such vitamins as A, D, K, and E can be properly absorbed only when fat dissolved. Our bodies have enough fat to produce 7 bars of soap. Don't try this at home. When we're awake, our brain may produce enough energy to turn an electric bulb on. It has 10 watts of power. What's that about? Our belly buttons have an entire animal encyclopedia in them, with a range of about 70 different bacteria. Some of them can be also found in the soil of Japan and even in polar ice caps. Our bodies actually glow. Anyway, we can't see that with an unaided eye because the light we emit is 1,000 times less intense than the minimum level we can perceive. Speaking of which, carmine used blushes and lipsticks is red dye made up of ground-up beetles. Oh. Saliva helps to taste food. Our taste buds are ready to perceive it only when it's dissolved by saliva. An eyelash is here to stay for 150 days only. The world eyelash record was about 3 inches long. They're also home for tiny mites. We blink about 4,200,000 times a year, at least once every 8 seconds. Could be cool if we were given a cent every time we blink. We could make more than $100 daily. It may sound crazy, but our bones are stronger than lots of building materials. A cubic inch of human bone can bear about 19,000 pounds, making it 4 times stronger than concrete. The only thing that makes our blood type different is sugar. A, B, and AB types have sugars, while O has none, which makes it perfect for donors. No sugar doesn't make O type less sweet. In fact, it attracts mosquitoes even more than the other blood types. People have only 8 blood types, while cows have 800 and possibly more. Like what? Mu positive and Mu negative? Our fingernails grow way faster than toenails. They grow almost 4 times slower because they have less damage than fingernails. Even though we stumble on them often, sudden circulation bursts usually don't last long. Nails don't only help us catch random tiny objects and peel the stickers off. If you didn't have a rigid structure against which to press, you wouldn't be able to judge how firmly to hold anything. Very few people can actually digest milk. The thing is, there's some special enzyme, let's call it a little helper, that breaks down the sugars any milk has. When people grow up, they run out of this enzyme. This sugar's called lactose, so adults that can't digest it are lactose intolerant. 68% of the world's population can't actually digest milk. If you're sleeping, it doesn't mean your whole body rests. In fact, Sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take a lot of time. Humans can't multitask. Really? We need time to switch from one task to another, but if we try to tackle several things at the same time, it's not going to be very productive. Try this one. Lift your right foot and start rotating it in a clockwise direction. Try to write the number 6 with your big toe in the air. Now, check the direction your foot's moving. It's moving in the opposite direction because to write the number 6, you need to make a counterclockwise movement. It actually takes a bit longer to start a new habit. It's not 100% true that 18 or 21 days are enough, as many people think. The process of getting a new habit can take up to 254 days, but on average, it takes around 66 days for a new habit to become automatic.
Your body actually glows. It emits a super faint light that's at its strongest at around 3 to 4 p.m. The sad news is that this glowing is 1,000 times less intense than what your eyes can see. Humans are the only animals that have chins. Even our closest genetic relatives, gorillas and chimps, lack this small piece of bone that extends forward from the jaw. Their lower jaws slant down and back from their front teeth. Scientists still haven't figured out this mystery. The opinions about why people are made this way differ. Some researchers think chins help us chew our food. Others are sure they have something to do with speaking. A few of us think it's simply a special place to grow a goatee. The most abundant element in the human body is oxygen at 65%, but it also contains lithium, cobalt, gold, and uranium. The rarest one of all is radium. On average, humans yawn 20 times a day, partially spontaneously, for example, when you're tired, but sometimes when someone yawns near you. Scientists think it could be a thing called social mirroring. Usually, when animals mimic each other, they recognize some action as useful, so they decide to do it too. With humans, it happens when someone crosses legs, laughs, smiles at you, or your stomach acid breaks down the foods you eat and turns them into easy-to-digest particles. It also stops nasty pathogens and microbes that could make you sick. In fact, your stomach acid is so strong that it can even dissolve bone and metal. Don't start munching down on your soda cans, though. That's probably not going to end well. Your brain has more than 86 billion nerve cells. They're all joined together by 100 trillion connections. That's even more than the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. There's a good chance you can guess someone's name based on how they look. Researchers showed portrait photos to a group of people, with 4 names written below. They were asked to choose the right name for this or that person. The law of chance says you'll guess it 25% of the time, but in this research, people got the names correct at a rate of 25 to 40%, and there were more than 94,000 faces shown. Let's say a man is called Bob. People will expect for him to have a rounder face than Tim. They expect Bob to be more jolly and ready to hang out with people. It has to affect his facial appearance in some way. A woman called Catherine can be considered more serious, studious, and concentrated. That could eventually influence her facial muscles as well. When ancient Romans flexed their biceps, they thought their muscles looked like mice. That's why the word muscle translates as little mouse in Latin. Your left lung is smaller than the right one because it shares space with your heart. Experts used to think that we can only distinguish 10,000 smells. In fact, a recent study found human beings can recognize 1 trillion smells. Millennials, or people born between 1981 and 1996, are more forgetful than older people. The main cause of their forgetfulness comes from higher levels of stress. So come on, dude, chill out, okay? Some scientists think that the purpose of fingerprints is a better grip, but others believe they're there to help wick water off them and allow the skin to stretch when needed to protect it from damage. There's also a theory saying that fingerprints improve the sense of touch. Hot coffee can taste better than cold coffee. Your taste bud receptors are most sensitive when your food is at or a little bit above room temperature. Hot coffee can then seem less bitter because taste buds that detect bitterness are more sensitive when the coffee is cold. The biggest molecule in the human body is the chromosome 1. A human cell has 23 chromosome pairs, and each chromosome 1 is made of 10 billion atoms. You inhale 25 sextillion molecules in just one breath. That's 25 followed by 21 zeros. When you're walking faster, at some point, you'll feel the natural urge to start jogging. Your body wants to have a stable state, whether you're running or walking. So, if you're walking fast, it will unconsciously force you to start running. One theory is, we use more energy when walking faster than running. So that's one of the ways the body saves energy. Your pinky is a powerful little thing. Without it, your hand would lose a significant part of its power. Your index and middle fingers cooperate with your thumb to grab and pinch. And your pinky, together with your ring finger, provides grip strength. The fattiest organ in your body is your brain. Fat makes up at least 60% of its dry weight. This quality got the brain to the Guinness World Records. The organ contains around 25% of your body's cholesterol, which is vital for the brain's well-being. Your bones are 4 times harder than concrete. The strongest bone in your body is the femur. It can support up to 30 times the weight of a grown-up person. Even crazier is that our bones are made up of composite material, meaning they're both hard and elastic at the same time. Your fingernails grow twice as fast as your toenails. It would take 15.5 months for your toenails to grow 1 inch, but only 7 months for your fingernails to get this long. The outer layer of your skin is thicker on your feet than on other parts of your body. The heart has its own electrical system and can continue beating even when it's disconnected from the body. The vessels in your body are long enough to circle the earth twice or more. The idea that we use only 10% of our brains is a myth. At any given time, you use almost 100%. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to perform simple tasks, like drink a cup of coffee. More than 70% of your brain consists of water, and it needs 20% of your body's oxygen supply. The average lifespan of one eyebrow hair is 4 months. The body of a 110-pound person contains 40 tablespoons of salt. If you ironed out all the wrinkles in your brain and laid it flat, it would be the size of a pillowcase. The brain wrinkles as there's not a lot of room in the skull, so it folds over itself as it grows. By the way, don't do that pillowcase thing with your brain. Trust me on this one. We spend 40% of our life with our eyes closed. Most of that time is when we're asleep. But don't forget to count blinking too, or while driving. You produce around 85,000 pints of spit in your lifetime. That's enough saliva to fill around 500 bathtubs. Enough said. The highest blood flow isn't actually in your heart, and it's not in your brain either. It's in your kidneys. It's super hard for us to grasp just how small an atom is. But think of it this way. Your body is made up of a staggering 7 octillion atoms. Yeah, doesn't that look like a 7 being chased by a whole mob of zeros? For adults, the blood makes up 7 to 8% of the total body weight. About 55% of your blood is liquid plasma. The rest is red and white blood cells and platelets. They form clots and prevent bleeding. You can't swallow and breathe at the same time. The food you swallow and the air you breathe go down the same part of your throat at first. Only a bit deeper does the passage split into the esophagus, for food and liquid, and the trachea, for air. When you swallow, your airway gets automatically closed off. This prevents you from accidentally inhaling food. But occasionally, it still happens. There's a name for the growling sound that your stomach makes when you're hungry. It's called borborygmi. It takes 6 to 8 hours for food to travel through your stomach and small intestine. That's because your body is trying to absorb all its nutrients. The idea that the tongue has flavor zones is a myth. All taste buds can detect 5 tastes, but some receptors are more responsive than others. Human beings are the only animals that willingly delay sleep. Just make sure you get enough.
You know what? In 10 years from now, you'll be a completely different person. Well, at least your skeleton will be. To reach its adult size, your skeleton went through a process called modeling, which means the development of growth and formation. Turns out it regenerates completely once every 10 years or so. This entire process ensures you always have healthy bone cells, which can support you and provide calcium to your body. And speaking of ways the body regenerates, every second you make 25 million new cells. I'll do the math for you. Okay, that means in about 15 seconds, you'll have made more cells than there are people in the United States. Think about that the next time you feel you haven't been productive enough. Some animals have eyes that need to adapt to hot climates, like camels, for example. Their eyes feature a third eyelid, but these sweep across from the corner of each eye. Because their environment is filled with small particles, they need to clean their eyes more frequently than other species. Now, see that little pink thing in the corner of your eye? It's also a third eyelid. Well, a vestige at least. In humans, the third eyelid is unnecessary because it no longer serves its original purpose. Next time you're tuning into your favorite song, try to pay some attention to your heartbeat. If you listen closely, you'll notice that sometimes your heartbeat may synchronize with the rhythm of the song. Now, not all genres of music have this special ability, but some tunes trigger the release of dopamine, or the happy hormone. This effect may give you a lower heart rate, breathing rate, and blood pressure. And speaking of that healthy ticker of yours, just in case you're wondering, it beats on average about 75 times per minute. This means each year, a human heart can pump enough blood to fill an Olympic-sized pool, if that were a thing. What's even more fascinating is that if you were to connect all your blood vessels end to end, it would be able to circle the Earth 2.5 times. But that's not good for your own health, so don't do that. Your heart can also continue to beat even if it's removed from the body. That's because it has its own internal battery, which allows it to beat as long as it receives oxygen. If you regularly have your nails done at a salon, you've probably noticed you need more appointments for your fingers than your toes. That's because fingernails do grow faster. The definitive scientific answer is still up for debate, but many specialists think it's because fingernails used to be claws, somewhere back in our ancient history. These days, they're flatter and have widened a bit, and it all happened when primates started using tools in their day-to-day lives, like stones and branches, so there was less use for claws. Once they got flatter, it meant nails wouldn't have gotten in the way if primates wanted to use the palms of their hands. As for why fingernails grow faster than toenails, the short answer may be the fact that we use our hands more than your feet. As such, our fingernails are more exposed, and we may have evolved to grow them faster. The more you use a certain part of your body, the more it becomes exposed to damage. So for me, I'm in danger of my mouth falling off. Oh boy. Getting back to our hands, it's about time we give a nice shout out to our humble pinkies. We don't see them as being really that important, since we don't use them for holding objects, eating, or writing. But recent studies have shown that losing the pinky on our dominant hands would have a devastating effect. Specialists haven't gathered enough data to supply specific numbers, but from what they've learned so far, losing our pinky would weaken our grip strength considerably, even if it's the lesser used finger. Adding the ring finger to that, and the effect would be worse for our grip strength. Another recent study done in the UK has shown that only about 40% of people are happy with how their nose looks. Regardless of how you feel about it, the human nose is a real-life superhero. That's because it acts as a heater, filter, and humidifier all at once. Inside each nostril, there are small, shelf-like bones that feature blood vessels. They heat the air up before it reaches other parts of our respiratory system. The mucus that's inside there handles making the air more humid. As for the filtering part, that's why we have nose hairs. Small particles get stuck on these small hairs, which helps prevent pollen, spores, viruses, or bacteria from reaching our lungs. Now, when watching cartoons, we're led to believe that the sound our heart makes is because it's touching its environment while beating. Well, it turns out that sound is actually made by the opening and closing of the heart valves. They're like small doors inside our hearts that open and close to pump blood correctly from one side of the heart to the other. For our bodies to work, blood needs to move at the right time and in the right direction, or else. Now let's talk teeth. Throughout your entire life, you'll probably spend up to 40 days total just brushing your teeth. And in case you're still wondering, teeth are not in fact bones, even though they do have a lot in common. One of the primary differences between bones and teeth is that our bones can regenerate. They are living tissue. Our teeth are not, and they remain permanently damaged once broken. Now here's another shocker. We are the only species on this planet to have a chin. There's still some debate about this subject in the scientific community, but one of the reasons why seems to be to make our jaws stronger. As humans have continued to evolve, their teeth and the muscles in their jaws got smaller and smaller, so they needed something to help with increased jaw resistance. Now, most of us have developed some specific traits depending on the area of the globe in which we live. But there is a group of people, specifically those who live in higher altitudes, that develop some pretty cool traits. That's because high-altitude environments come with less oxygen. Not only do these people survive in these locations, but they've adapted so well that they actually thrive. In the Andes Mountains of South America, people have evolved red blood cells that can carry much more oxygen. It makes their overall circulatory system much more efficient. People living in Tibet have to endure similar conditions, but surprisingly, they have adapted differently. In Tibet, they can take more breaths so that they can properly oxygenate their bodies. You've probably heard the myth about dreams only lasting a couple of seconds in reality. Turns out that yes, some of them do, but not all dreams are the same. There are a lot of things we don't understand yet about how we dream. What we do know is that they mainly happen during the rapid eye movement or REM stage of sleep. During this time, your brain is more active, about as active as it is when you're awake. And it's named REM because during the sleep stage, your eyes tend to move a lot. Dreams can happen during the other stages of sleep too, but you're less likely to remember them. As for the length of each dream, they can go from a few seconds to even 20 to 30 minutes. Also, you're more likely to remember a dream if you've woken during the REM stage. Most people have 3 to 5 dreams per night, but some people can have up to 7. I know, seems unlikely, but remember, you immediately forget most of what you dream. Just like we have unique fingerprints, we also develop unique tongue prints. Research has shown that those approximately 10,000 taste buds on our tongues are laid out in a one-of-a-kind pattern. Truth is, about 80% of what you believe is taste is actually smell. That combination of taste and smell that we perceive is what we come to know as flavor. That's probably because our sense of smell is around 10,000 times more sensitive than our sense of taste. Our mouths have also another cool superpower called mouthfeel. With the help of the somatosensory system, it allows us to sense the texture of our food. The system is activated by physical touches, such as pressure, touch, or vibrations. It's even sensitive to pain and temperature. We also use our tongues to identify the size, form, and texture of food, which is crucial for proper chewing and digestion. Tongues are also good for wagging, sticking out at certain people, and trumpet playing. The human body is this perfectly balanced machine, right? Well, not when I'm using it. Normally, all its parts work seamlessly together to keep us thriving and, well, alive. Each of our organs is essential for our day-to-day activities, from breathing, walking, talking, and coming up with bright ideas that push humanity forward. But are they really essential? Do we really need all those body parts? Or are some of them just ancient relics that we just got stuck with in this weird game of evolution? Take wisdom teeth, for example. Somebody already took mine. Yeah, they're those pairs of teeth stuck in the back of your mouth you often have to go to the dentist for. They're also known as third molars, and while they can be used to chew food, a lot of people think they're just unnecessary. And get this, around 22% of people worldwide don't even have all 4 of them. When they do grow in, they're the most likely to become impacted, which means they get stuck in the jawbone sideways and can't properly come through the gums. It's all because our jaws are often too small to accommodate these extra guys. Some smart scientists think that's because we've evolved to have smaller jaws over time. Recent evidence also shows that what we eat as kids might also be to blame, but it's hard to know for sure. Apparently, munching on hard-to-chew foods like raw veggies and nuts can actually stimulate jaw growth, while eating soft processed foods can kinda stunt it. And that leaves little space for our back teeth to come in and, do their thing. Will they disappear altogether in the future? I guess we human mammals will just have to wait and see. Now let's talk about the vomeral nasal organ, or as I like to call it, the nose's secret instrument. Ooh. You see, rodents and other mammals have this awesome ability to communicate with each other using chemical signals called pheromones. And guess what? They have a special organ called the vomeral nasal organ, or VNO, that helps them detect these pheromones. Here's where it gets interesting. While most adult humans have something resembling a VNO in their nose, it turns out that it's basically a useless remnant. Neuroscientists even say that if you look at the anatomy of this organ, you won't see any cells that resemble those of similar organs from other mammals. Also, this organ in humans doesn't seem to be communicating with the brain either. Now, it's not all bad news. Even though the human VNO is pretty useless, it looks like it still might respond to some pheromones. Will humans keep this organ on their evolutionary to-do list? For now, I'd place it in the maybe pile. Now, here's a tail. Animals that feature tails need these structures for a lot of things. Some need it for balance, others for navigation, while some need it to attract potential partners. But did you know that when we're just a few weeks old in our mother's belly, we actually have tails too? That's right, we have a whole little tail complete with vertebrae. As we develop, that tail magically disappears and we're left with our trusty tailbone. Humans and apes are unique in that we don't have tails, unlike other primates. It's a mystery why apes lost their tails, but we can all agree that it makes us stand out in a crowd. However, once in a blue moon, a human is born with a little vestigial tail. Cute, right? Well, don't get too excited, because these tails don't have vertebrae and can sometimes be associated with a tricky condition of the spine. Either way, these tails are usually harmless and can be easily removed with a quick surgery. And let's be honest, it's not like we're going to miss it. After all, who needs a tail when you have arms and legs to get around? Plus, can you imagine trying to find pants that fit with a tail sticking out the back? Not a good look. There's little to no chance humans will end up needing tails in the future, so I'm guessing the tailbones are bye-bye in future generations. Humans also have a funny little fold of membrane in the inner corner of the eyes, called the plica semilunaris. It's basically what's left of a third eyelid, which is still found in some animals, like gorillas and other primates. But here's the funny thing. Even our close relatives, the chimpanzees, have this little fold that appears to be useless too. So we're not alone in this eye quirkiness. Speaking of unusual membranes, they serve a variety of functions in different animals, such as protecting the eye from dirt and moisture, or hiding the iris from predators. Some species can even see through their transparent membranes when they're underwater or underground. Now, the reasons why we humans lost our third eyelid is still a bit of a mystery. Maybe changes in our habitat and eye physiology made it unnecessary, or maybe we just evolved to be too cool for a third eyelid. Who knows? With or without vestigial organs, it's interesting to imagine what humans might look like in the future. Many organs have become obsolete because of our lifestyle changes. Care to have a peek into what we might look like in the future? And in the same vein, or artery, have you heard of the concept of text claw? It's where you spend so much time typing on your phone or laptop that your hand starts to cramp up like a claw. And that's just one of the physical changes that could happen to us if we don't take care of our bodies in this tech-heavy world. But it's not just our hands that are affected. We could end up with 90-degree elbows from constantly holding our devices at that angle, and even a smaller brain from all the distractions and information overload. Now, I know what you're thinking. We just can't give up technology and go back to the Stone Age. And you're right, we don't have to. But we do need to be aware of the potential negative effects and take steps to reduce their damage. That's why a team of designers put their creative efforts together to present Mindy, a future human whose body has physically changed due to the constant and never-ending use of smartphones, laptops, and other types of maniacal devices. While Mindy's exaggerated changes may not be in our future, the concerns behind them are real. So, what can we do? Well, one suggestion is to take regular breaks from our screens and stretch our legs a little. Maybe even encourage some office yoga or dance parties to get the blood flowing. We don't have to give up technology completely, but we do need to be mindful of its effects on our bodies and minds. Many years in the future, we might even get smaller in size. One scientist reckons that if we were smaller, our bodies would need less energy, which would come in super handy in our increasingly crowded planet. It's funny to think about how different our lives are now compared to when we were hunter-gatherers. Back then, we only had to interact with a handful of people each day. But now, remembering people's names is a super important trait, and it might even be something we grow to become better at. Or, technology might actually play a role in our evolution. Scientists believe that we could one day have implants in our brains that help us remember people's names. It's like having a biological phone book directly in your body. Wouldn't that be cool? Who knows? Maybe in the future, we'll even have visible technology as part of our appearance. Imagine having an artificial eye that can see different colors and visuals. And don't even get me started on what we might look like if we colonize Mars. With the lower gravity, our bodies could change in all sorts of ways. We might have longer arms and legs, or even insulating body hair like our Neanderthal ancestors. It's hard to pinpoint what we might look like in the future without very precise data to back the models up. But it's fair to say these changes will be interesting, to say the least. As for me, well, it's too late to say the least. I've said over 1,400 words here already. Alright, quick question. Do you think you know everything about your own body? Are you sure? Well, how about the fact that 25% of an adult's bones are in their feet? Or that taste buds aren't actually those bumps on your tongue? Well, get ready for some eye-openers. Ow! No, we're really not going to open someone's eyes. I don't do surgery here on the bright side. Well, maybe in a future video. Anyway, here we go with a big batch of biological background bots to boggle your brain. Your stomach gets a new lining every 3 to 4 days. This way, your body prevents the stomach from digesting itself. Your brain contains more than 86 billion nerve cells, which are joined with one another by 100 trillion connections. That's many more than the number of stars in our home Milky Way galaxy. By the way, if you decided to count all those numerous nerve cells in your brain, it would take you up to 3,000 years. Better get started. Your fingernails grow faster on your dominant hand. In other words, if you write with your right hand, you'll have to trim those nails more often. Your fingernails also grow faster in the summer and during the day. When your brain sends messages to different parts of your body, the signals travel along your nerves at a speed of up to 270 miles per hour. It's way faster than a sports car. People spend more than 4 years of their lives eating. Wow, is the restaurant service that slow? Just kidding. The fastest muscles in your body are those that make your eyes blink. Their contraction speed is 1 blink in less than 1/100th of a second. In a day, you can blink more than 15,000 times. In their lifetime, the average person processes more than 100,000 pounds of food. That's more than the weight of 7 elephants combined. And how do you eat an elephant? Yeah, 1 bite at a time. If someone decided to uncoil the human DNA, the whole thing would stretch for 10 billion miles, which is 40,000 times more than the distance between the Earth and the Moon. If you don't have insomnia, you're likely to spend around 1/3 of your life asleep. But there are creatures that sleep even more. For example, for a dog, this time is 44% of their life, and for a python, 75%. During just 1 day, all the blood in your body travels more than 12,000 miles. That's half as long as the distance around Earth. Your skeleton will renew itself completely within 10 years. And yes, without surgery. An adult uses around 200 muscles to make just one step. And don't tell me I don't work out enough. Every minute, your body sheds more than 3,000 skin cells. It's almost 200,000 skin cells per hour and more than 9 pounds per year. Hey, it's the Shedding Skin Cells weight loss plan. But don't worry, you still have about 300 million skin cells at any given moment. Plus, your skin completely renews itself every 28 to 30 days. The liver is the only human organ that can regenerate completely. As little as 25% of the original liver weight can get back to its full size. Skin cells create a lot of dust, not only under your bed, but also in the Earth's atmosphere. If someone collected all the flaked-off skin cells floating in the air, this dust would weigh up to 1 billion tons. It's 150 times the weight of the Great Pyramid. How's that for a comparison? Now, you won't see your taste buds by the naked eye because they're too tiny. The small bumps most people take for taste buds are called papillae. Real taste buds are on top of these hair-like projections. By the way, taste buds also have a very short life cycle. They live for no longer than 10 to 14 days, so they get a very short taste of life. The average person has more than 100,000 hairs on their head. And since this hair grows about 6 inches per year, it'll make more than 40 feet in a lifetime. Some people can hear their eyeballs moving inside the eye sockets. Wow, that must be no fun. Now, unlike other parts of your body, your ears and nose never stop growing. Wow, that must be no fun. Your skin wrinkles if you stay in the water for too long, but not because it absorbs water. When your body's wet, wrinkled fingers and toes provide you with a better grip. You know, like when the treads on your car tires grip the road better when they're new. Your eyes are an amazing instrument. They can distinguish between 10 million different colors. Your brain uses more than 20% of your body's energy, even when you're resting. When you're asleep, it still consumes almost as much power as when you're awake. It also burns about 330 calories per day at that. An adult person has about 25% of all their bones in their feet. Most of them are tiny but crucial. If these bones are out of alignment, so is the rest of the body. You breathe around 20,000 times a day. Try not to stop. I actually set a personal best record today for consecutive days breathing, and I plan to top that tomorrow. Human bones are a real paradox. They're almost 5 times stronger than a steel bar with the same width, but can fracture on impact and are rather brittle. Fingers don't have muscles that can make them move. All the muscles that move the finger joints are located in the forearm and palm. Your body contains more than 37 trillion cells. Earth has more than 7 billion inhabitants. It means that there are over 5,000 times more cells in your body than people on our planet. It surely depends on your lifestyle and on how much you move, but the average person will walk up to 110,000 miles in their lifetime, which is half as long as the distance from Earth to the Moon, or more than 4 times longer than the distance around our planet. Now, if a person has anosmia, also called smell blindness, they can't distinguish and detect smells, but they can still be smelly. Sorry. You start feeling thirsty when water loss is 1% of your body weight. More than 5% and you may faint. Water loss that's bigger than 10% of the body weight and dehydration can end a person, if you know what I mean. The strongest muscle in your body based on its weight is your jaw muscle. Yeah, mine is way overdeveloped. At any moment, 50,000 cells in your body are getting replaced by new ones. Boy, that sounds like a company I used to work for. By the end of their life, the average person can recall up to 150 trillion pieces of information, except where they left their car keys. Even if fingerprints are badly damaged, they can still grow back with their original pattern. Your most powerful sneeze can travel at a speed of more than 100 miles per hour, almost as fast as a skydiver in freefall. The average person has about 250 hairs in each eyebrow. These hairs get completely replaced every 4 months. Your brain's memory capacity is equivalent to about 4 terabytes on a hard drive, which is more than 8 million photos. People are the only living creatures that can naturally sleep on their backs. Even apes usually sleep in a sitting position, leaning on something. Your longest bone is your thigh bone, not your funny bone, and the tiniest one is in your ear. It's shorter than a grain of rice. The largest organ in your body is your skin. Despite being thin, it weighs a surprising 9 to 11 pounds. That's the weight of a healthy and well-fed house cat. Your skull may feel like it's all in one piece, but in fact, it consists of 29 different bones. The only part of your body that can't heal itself is your teeth. Ah, what a shame. Right-handed people tend to chew most of their food on the right side of their mouths, while the left-handed opt for the other side. Out of all people who can move their ears, only 30% can move just one ear. Ooh, such talent! Every person has dimples on their lower back, but in some people they're more pronounced than in others. These dimples appear in places where the pelvis is connected with the sacrum, so their existence, even if it's not apparent, makes sense. Your right lung is shorter than the left one because it has to leave some room for your liver. The left lung, on the other hand, is narrower since it has to make space for the heart. A male's lungs can usually hold more air than a woman's. Surprisingly, you burn more calories when you're sleeping than when you're watching TV. Actually, that should tell you something helpful. By the time you turn 60, you're likely to lose 50% of your taste buds. Your hair grows twice faster when you're traveling by plane. It has to do with higher atmospheric pressure. The muscles that help your eyes focus make around 100,000 movements a day. If you want to make your leg muscles move as much, you'd need to walk 50 miles. When you listen to music, your heart starts beating in sync with it. Now, I've tried this one myself too. Pinch your elbow as hard as you can. You barely feel pain. How come? Well, different areas of your skin have different nerve endings. Our bodies are designed to be more sensitive to pain in places that are at higher risk of getting damaged. Those important parts have more nerve endings so that we're more alert and able to protect ourselves. And thick skin, like that on elbows, has fewer pain detectors. Now, I'm not talking about the tingling, jolting pain you can feel when you hit your elbow against something. Oh, that feels almost like your entire arm has been electrocuted. It's not a feeling I would consider funny, but it comes from the funny bone. Now, the funny bone isn't actually a bone. It's a nerve that starts in your spine, goes through your neck, through your elbow, and through your fingers. Its real name is the ulnar nerve. It's one of the 3 primary nerves in your arm, and it provides sensation to the fingertips. Your ulnar nerve is well protected by muscle, fat, and bone. But there's one spot at your elbow where this nerve is exposed, and that spot is, the funny bone. A different but real version of Achilles' story, huh? Okay, so now you know why it hits so different when you bump your funny bone and why you feel nothing when you pinch your elbow. Now, the next phenomenon is related to socially awkward moments. Okay, maybe not entirely. It might happen when your crush gives you a compliment. I'm talking about blushing. Now, I'm not sure those butterflies in your stomach exist when you're in love. But I'm sure of this, when you blush, your stomach lining also turns red. Yeah, I've looked. The stomach lining is the tissue that protects your stomach walls from the acid inside. When you blush, it also turns red because blushing happens when the blood rises to the surface of the skin. This affects the stomach too. Now, this is a natural process, a physiological response to the change in your emotions. Now, since we're talking about the stomach, it might be a good time to mention that the stomach fluid has the ability to melt a steel table. Yup. This means the acid would be able to digest your internal organs. Luckily, the stomach lining prevents this from happening. Number 3 is about letting you know that you can glow in the dark. Now, don't turn off the lights just yet. You can't see it with the unaided eye. These visuals of glittering human bodies come from ultra-sensitive cameras. Japanese scientists were the first to capture the images of human bioluminescence. Only ultra-sensitive cameras can reveal that our bodies emit tiny amounts of light, because this light is 1,000 times weaker than the human eye can detect. Apparently, all living creatures produce a small amount of light thanks to the chemical reactions in their cells. Humans are newly added to this list. The researchers had been photographing the upper bodies of the volunteers for several days. The results showed that the amount of emitted light followed a 24-hour cycle. The glow is at its highest in late afternoon and lowest late at night. Plus, the brightest light is emitted from the cheeks, forehead, and neck. Interestingly, this does not correspond with the brightest areas caught by thermal cameras. Did you know you're a little bit taller in the morning than you are later at night? Yes, I've been measuring you. Seriously, this height difference is related to gravity. Its force compresses the cartilage in your spine and knees when you stand up or sit down throughout the day. But when you're lying down, your spine decompresses and relaxes. That's why when you wake up in the morning after resting in bed all night, you're taller. The increase in height is not even above an inch, so don't bet on who is taller after hearing this information. Fun fact, astronauts returning from a mission are a few inches taller than they usually are on Earth. It's because of the lack of gravity on the International Space Station. They don't remain that tall forever, though. When they're on the Earth again, gravity gradually squeezes them back down to their usual height. Now, let's get back to the organ we've already spoken about, the skin. Yes, the skin is an organ. In fact, it's the largest organ in your body. It contributes to about 15% of your body weight. What else does this organ do besides covering your body? It performs vital functions. For instance, it protects your body from external physical and biological harm. Plus, it prevents excessive water loss. Now, I can't help wondering what other surprises the human body has in store for us. But right now, let's move on to the animal planet. Owls don't have eyeballs. Instead, they have something called eye tubes. Their rod-shaped eyes do not move in their sockets as our eyeballs do. That's why owls would have to move their entire bodies to look around. But moving their torsos would make some noise, and other animals would hear it. So owls have evolved to have necks that can twist to around 270 degrees, and they move super silently. But why the concern? Well, night vision requires large corneas to get as much light as possible. This is the main reason why most nocturnal animals, such as the slow loris or tarsier, have big eyes. For owls, it works a little differently. Since they have small heads, such large eyes wouldn't be able to fit inside. Now, even though these creatures don't have eyeballs, they have 3 sets of eyelids. One set is for blinking, one is for sleeping, and the last one is for keeping their eye tubes clean. So, do the owls give a hoot about that? Yes, they do. Moving on from nocturnal animals to the ones you're more familiar with. Meow. Cats have an extra organ that allows them to taste scents in the air. This organ is called Jacobson's organ, or the vomeral nasal organ. Jacobson's organ is located inside the cat's nasal cavity and opens into the roof of the mouth. This organ can detect specific chemicals by using nerves that lead directly to the brain. That's not a regular sniffing, though. The odor receptors of Jacobson's organ aren't designed to catch ordinary smells. They detect chemicals that have no odor at all. In other words, cats can detect undetectable smells. It's not just this. Jacobson's organ increases the sense of smell. For instance, when kittens need to find their mother's milk, imagine there are 2 mother cats and 4 kittens. Kittens can distinguish their mother from the other grown-up cat with the help of their sense of smell. Now, when 2 people meet, they assess each other's body language. Cats can usually do this by sniffing each other's heads. This greeting releases pheromones that can tell a lot about one cat to the other, like what the other feline likes to eat or if they are healthy or not. They can even evaluate whether the other cat is happy or moody, all thanks to Jacobson's organ. Now, another fact about cats. Their nose has distinct ridges that look like a pattern. Similar to our fingerprints, every cat has a unique nose print. It can be used as a form of identification. Okay, cat, we can nail you for breaking the vase. We have your nose prints all over it. Now, do you want to cut a deal? Just tell us what you know about the dog and that chewed-up DVD. Dog lovers? No, I didn't forget about you. Here's a myth you've probably heard. Dogs are colorblind. But they aren't. However, it is true that the color range they can detect is limited compared to the spectrum humans can see. Their color palette consists mostly of yellows, blues, and violets. Our reds, greens, and oranges are not noticeable to them. Now this one is about turtles. These animals cannot leave their shells and get back whenever they want. In fact, they are completely attached to their shells. These shells grow with turtles, similar to the human skin. A turtle's shell consists of 50 bones. It also includes a skeleton with the spine and rib cage. So, they go on vacation with it. It's kind of like an RV that you can't get rid of. Well, here's some facts you'll find hard to digest. Your stomach has a pretty incredible capacity, being able to hold up to half a gallon of liquids. That's a whole large bottle of Coke. It's pretty hard to estimate how much hard food you can eat because it's processed with your teeth before it gets to your stomach. There's definitely not enough room for a turkey, but a good-sized chicken would probably fit in it. If you were asked where your stomach was, you would probably point to your tummy. Sorry, that's wrong. It's actually up here, hidden in between your ribs. Scientists believe that the appendix will disappear eventually. Nobody really knows why we need it, but some researchers claim it might have existed to help our ancestors digest tree bark. Because it's no longer part of our daily diet, the appendix isn't necessary and can disappear from our bodies without any consequences. The appendix isn't the only obsolete part of our body. Wisdom teeth aren't that useful either. Yeah, they used to come in handy whenever our ancestors lost some of their teeth, but the only thing they help us lose now is the money we spend extracting them. Almost all of our body is covered with hairs, even if we don't notice them. They grow even in the belly button. Their purpose is to catch lint. Check it out. See? Your liver acts as your own personal bodyguard, protecting you from toxins and many other things you don't want hanging around in your body. It's also pretty indestructible and can even regenerate. Only about 43% of you is actually you. Over 50% of the cells in your body belong to tiny little creatures that mainly live in your gut. Still, even though your own cells are fewer than microbial ones, there are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. See, you're not alone. With this in mind, your own genes are less than half of what you really consist of. If you take all the microbes dwelling within your body and count their genes, you'll find between 2 to 20 million. If you sleep, it doesn't mean all of your body sleeps. In fact, sometimes your brain has to work even harder when you're asleep. It needs to process tons of information, and reports usually take a lot of time. The nose definitely gets a good rest while you're sleeping. Amazingly, your sense of smell basically deactivates at night. You wouldn't even be bothered if there was a really terrible smell in your bedroom. No comment. The nose is probably one of the most underappreciated parts of the body. We wouldn't even be able to enjoy eating without it. About 80% of the taste of any food is thanks to the nose and its ability to recognize odors. If you hold your nose while eating, you will taste almost nothing. With no sense of smell, you're likely to recognize food mostly by texture. So an onion might seem no different than a big refreshing apple. Scientists used to believe we could distinguish about 10,000 smells, but they were wrong. Recent research showed that people are actually able to distinguish between more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. Your nose just doesn't help you breathe and catch odors, it filters the air for sensitive throats and lungs. If we inhale dry air, the nose moistens it, cools it, and heats it if it's necessary. Also, the nose cleans the air of dirt. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at 30, and it starts shrinking by the age of 40. It happens to everyone and doesn't affect your mental strength in any way. Our brain can store only 7 bits in its short-term memory. Don't even try to compare your brain with a phone capacity, not even the one you had back in 2005. That's why you can't even learn a phone number by heart. Our short-term memory functions just like a chalkboard. You can get some information, but sooner or later, you run out of space. To check your working memory capacity, try this test. Ask a friend to write a list of 10 words and read it to you. Most people recall 7 or fewer items from that list. Your RAM, or working memory, is an essential thing that we need to perform almost any everyday activity, including basic conversations, surfing the net, and even petting your dog. Our strongest and emotional memories are often fake. The central memory gives us the confidence to believe that we remember everything, even though most of the details are made up in our heads. Not only your brain shrinks as you get older, you too shrink dramatically. The bones get more brittle, the backbone gets compressed. A similar thing happens when you rest at night. Your bones kind of relax too. Because of this, you wake up taller in the mornings than you are at the end of the day. Among mammals, only humans can walk on 2 legs for their entire lives. You might think that kangaroos or gorillas move in the same way, but kangaroos use their tail as a 3rd leg, and gorillas use their long arms to keep balance. Your bones take part in metabolism too. Since they mostly consist of calcium, when there's not enough of this element in your blood, bones start shedding it into the bloodstream, balancing your body. The same reaction works in reverse too. When there's too much calcium in your blood, it goes into the bones to be stored for later. The only bone to have a sense of humor in your body is inside your upper arm. That's why it's called the humerus. Okay, I made that one up. Moving along. The only bones that never grow are found in our ears. We can hear thanks to these tiny bones because they have adapted to transmit sound vibrations. Doctors call them the oscular chain. One of these hearing bones, the stapes, is the smallest bone in your entire body. It's no larger than a grain of rice. Our height, shape of our body, and skin color depend a lot on where our ancestors used to live, but we can adapt to new conditions even within our own lifespan. For example, if you move from plains to the mountains, you'll eventually develop more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. And naturally, if you move from a colder climate to a hotter and sunnier one, your skin will get darker to adapt. Our lifespan is programmed within ourselves. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. That means, if we could find a way to trick ourselves into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. Body fat isn't just a nuisance. It acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might protect your vitals from irreparable damage. Heads up! Your skull isn't a single bone. It actually consists of 28 different bones, many of which are fused together to protect your brain. The mandible, or the lower jaw, is the only skull bone that isn't fixed to the bone around it. It's attached with connective tissues and muscles. This is what makes it so mobile. You can move it in any direction you like. You see, the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs. They're in your head. The masseter is the main muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you chew your food. Now, we've got 2 really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection, so the reflex that protects them needs to be as fast as lightning. These muscles can shut the eyelids in less than 1/10 of a second. People with double-jointed thumbs can bend them backward. It looks super unusual and very few people can do it. Still, it's totally okay. Even though it looks painful, it actually doesn't hurt at all for someone with a double-jointed thumb. Now, we recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these 3. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees, because every single person has slight vision differences, but it's about 1 million combinations on average. You see? Wow! Humans can distinguish between more than 1 trillion scents, and each person has a unique odor. Tell me about it. Just kidding. This ain't smell-o-vision. But have you ever wondered how this sense is possible? Well, let's sniff around and find out. Imagine you're eating a freshly baked cookie. Not only does it smell good, but it tastes delicious. As it crumbles in your mouth, it starts to release little molecules. These travel through the back of your throat, while some of them make their way into your nose. Now, picture yourself walking into a room with a vanilla-scented candle. You identify the musky smell through a process called diffusion. Air and odor molecules spread freely in all directions until they reach your nose. Let me shrink myself down to the size of an odor molecule, and I'll show you how it works. As you take a deep breath, I'll enter through your nose, the first organ of your respiratory system. Careful, don't trip on the boogers. Can you see those thick little hairs inside your nostrils? Those act as security guards, and they're as thick as the follicles on your head. Their job is to stop dust, debris, germs, and other particles from getting into your lungs. The shiny stuff on the edges of the hairs is mucus. No, it's not. Yes, it is. It traps the unwelcome particles that show up in your nose. It also keeps the lining of your nose moist because the skin there is very sensitive and needs constant hydration. Uh-oh, watch out! Sometimes I have to dodge these big, fleshy things that occasionally invade here. But not to worry. These are called fingers, and they're only interested in mining for the boogers. Further in, there are some tiny hairs called the cilia, but you can only see them through a microscope. They're another defense mechanism in your system. You've also got these in your ears and other parts of your body. When unwelcome visitors get trapped, the cilia move back and forth to push the mucus out of the way. They send it to either the back of your throat or to the front of your nose. Finally, we have some room. This huge chamber is the nasal cavity. It goes all the way to the upper back of your throat. Its job is to filter, moisturize, and warm up the air you inhale. Can you see those 3 extended pieces on the wall of your nasal cavity that look like small hot dogs? Those are the turbinate, and you've got 3 in each nostril. The first turbinate is the first tissue to meet the outside air. Oxygen molecules will go down that slide that leads to your lungs, but we're heading the other way. Some odor molecules go into your lungs too, but they come right out when you exhale. Look up at that thin layer of mucus. That's where we're heading. Right underneath the mucus, you've got more cilia, and then there's the olfactory epithelium. This is a very special tissue lying on the roof of your nasal chamber. Think of it as a block of soft, squishy sponges that contains a lot of important things, like the smell detectors leading to your brain. Oh, look! There are some teeny tiny things branching out like little plant roots. Those are the dendrite, and they're extensions of your nerve cells. You've got around 8 million neurons in each nostril. Let's squeeze through and see what's going on further in. Here we are. These round little guys that look like small cherry seeds are your smell receptors, and they're supported by other cells, like a bunch of pillows placed between glass spheres to keep them in place. Let me just shrink even further and wake up one of those smell receptors. Here. Each of them is sensitive to a group of smells. I'll bind myself to one that's sensitive to my smell, just like a piece of puzzle fitting into place. The moment the receptor cell picks me up, it triggers a series of events. The receptor is now firing an electric signal through a thin tube called the axon. Let's follow it and see where it goes. We're now passing through a connective tissue that has olfactory glands. These are responsible for producing the mucus in your nose that we just swam through. Knock knock! That feels like a hard shell. It's called the cribriform plate, and it separates your brain from your nasal cavity. It's got little holes in it to allow the nerves that pick up smells to go through. As we move upwards, the nerves are starting to connect into bundles. Squeezing through one of the holes in the plate, we see a bunch of them going further in. Oh, wow! Look at that! Those bundles of nerve connect to a little ball. That's the glomerulus. It received the input from the little receptor cells, and it will process it further. Even though it receives smell data from one receptor, it can detect multiple smells. You've got around 1,800 of those spheres extending above each nostril. and they're all located on top of the bony plate we've just squeezed through. Now, we're in the outward extension of the brain that sits right above your nasal cavity. It looks like a bulb, which is why it's called the olfactory bulb. We've got a long road ahead of us. The little processing spheres are now extending to something called the mitral cells. These are neurons, and they look like little spiders with very long legs extending on each side. Let's move further into the bulb, to the olfactory tract, and then inside the brain. The bulb is part of the limbic system. This is a large network of structures close to the middle of the brain that connects to the central nervous system. Brain cells carry the information to a small area in your brain called the amygdala. That's where you process your emotions. Stop it. Okay. It's also the area that activates your fight or flight response. Then the signals go to the hippocampus, the place where you make memories, process emotions, and learn stuff. Next stop, the thalamus, which sends some of the smell information to the orbital frontal cortex to connect it with your taste information. Smell is the only sensation that travels directly to the emotional part of your head. Other senses, such as sight and sound, first go to the thalamus. This acts as a relay center in the middle of the cerebral hemisphere, and it sends the data to other regions of the brain. But our sense of smell works in mysterious ways. When you haven't eaten for some time, your body produces a hormone called ghrelin. That hormone sends a signal to your brain, "Hey, you need energy, buddy. I can't find anything in your stomach." Your brain responds by making you hungry. The same hormone activates some receptors which trigger the little smell bulb we traveled through earlier. This gives you a heightened sense of smell to improve your chances of finding food. Now, imagine you're in a store, and someone sprays some perfume on a piece of paper. You lean in to sniff it and close your eyes. That action works like an elimination process, where you remove one of your senses to heighten the other ones. It's like when people turn down the radio in their cars when they're lost or trying to concentrate. When you have a cold, you lose your sense of smell. That's called anosmia or smell blindness. And because the roof of your throat connects to your nose, when you chew on food, aromas are released and activate your smell receptors. With a stuffed nose, the smell molecules from the food can't reach the sensory cells. They can't make their way to the thalamus to connect to your sense of taste. This is why everything seems tasteless. Everyone smells the world using different receptors, and some scientists believe that every individual has at least one odor that they can't detect. It could be vanilla, garlic, menthol, coffee, or even certain kinds of fruit. Have you ever sniffed some spicy peppers that made you cough? A few years ago, scientists discovered that the lungs have some odor receptors too. But instead of sending the spicy scent to your brain, they give you a signal to cough. Quite amazing, isn't it? Who else knows what the nose knows? Your toes? Well, maybe on some future video. Bye-bye!
If you've ever hit your toe on a corner and felt that sharp pain, you know what I mean by why we have such delicate feet. Our feet are super sensitive. They're covered with this special hairless skin full of nerve endings. That's why it hurts so bad when we get a foot injury. Yet they aren't as delicate as we think. It's incredible how our feet are put together. They consist of 26 bones, 33 joints, and over 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments. These are working together like a machine to let us move around. When we run, our feet work like springs. They must handle up to 7 times our body weight every time they hit the ground. Thanks to the clever arrangement of ligaments, tendons, and muscles, our feet store and return much of that force to the ground. By the way, they can also give us hints about our overall health. And every pair of feet is unique. No two pairs are exactly the same. They come in different sizes, shapes, flexibility, strength, and walking patterns. It's like our feet have their own personalities. But how have our feet come to this point? researchers have been trying to figure out when and how early humans started walking upright. Well, they've been looking at feet, toes to be exact. Bipedalism, which means walking on two legs, was a major step in human evolution. It influenced a bunch of other changes in our lineage, like how we behave socially and develop our material culture. So, these scientists have been digging into the details of foot evolution to piece together the story of our species. The team has been checking out these special joints called metatarsophalangeal joints, which are placed between the long bones of the foot and the toe bones. In 2015, they found that, unlike in other primates, this type of joint in humans faces upwards, allowing us to extend it, which is perfect for walking on two legs. But apes and other primates have downward-facing joints, giving their feet a hand-like grasp. In their latest study, the researchers looked at fossils of primates and hominins, a human group, to see when this upward-facing joint first appeared. It turned out it had shown up about 4.4 million years ago in the lateral toes closest to the outside edge of the foot. Yet the big toe kept its downward-facing joint until much later, about 2.2 million years ago. So, it seems like early feet might have still kept some grasping ability while people were adapting to walking on two legs. The fully bipedal adapted big toe evolved relatively recently. But weirdly, our feet didn't leave much of a trace in the fossil record until recently. It's frustrating because understanding how our feet evolved is crucial to unraveling the story of human evolution, especially when it comes to walking on two legs. Our modern human foot evolved separately to suit different needs. The chimpanzee foot is more flexible, suitable for climbing trees, while the human foot is stiffer, perfect for bipedal walking. Speaking of feet, we might as well talk about the benefits of walking barefoot. It can actually bring us closer to our natural walking pattern, or our gait. That's a good thing, because it allows our body to move the way it's meant to. Shoes can make you feel like you are walking on clouds, but they can sometimes hinder certain muscle groups from doing their job and strengthening our bodies. But when you go barefoot, for starters, you have better control over how your foot lands on the ground. This helps with balance, body awareness, and even pain relief. Plus, it can improve your foot mechanics, which can positively affect your hips, knees, and core. It keeps your foot and ankle joints flexible and strong, thanks to the proper range of motion and muscle stability. And let's not forget about those uncomfortable shoes that don't fit right. Walking barefoot can relieve issues like bunions or hammer toes caused by improper footwear. Have I mentioned stronger leg muscles? Yep. Going barefoot can give your legs a nice workout, which is excellent for supporting your lower back. So, kick off those shoes and let your feet breathe the next time you find yourself on soft grass or sandy shores. Your body will thank you for it. Not just our feet have evolved over time. Our ancestors had bigger brains too. It means our brains have shrunk. Researchers looked at cranial fossils and discovered that our brains started downsizing about 3,000 years ago. Agriculture took the stage around 10,000 to 5,000 years ago, and civilizations sprouted like mushrooms after a rainstorm. There were sprawling cities, architectural wonders, and even some fancy writing thrown into the mix. The connection between brain size and IQ isn't as straightforward as it seems. Many critters rock brains that make ours look dumb. A massive study with thousands of brain scans and IQ tests revealed that brain size and IQ are like two friends at a party. Sometimes they dance together, and sometimes they go solo, with no strict correlation. It turns out some ant societies are like a mirror to our own, complete with their own version of farming and teamwork. And ants with bigger societies have bigger brains, except when they get into the whole farming gig. But smaller brains might be a cooler choice when teamwork gets super complex. Maybe the invention of writing around 2,000 years ago also played its role. It's like the ultimate external brain. You write stuff down and boom, you have ideas at your fingertips. It's like your brain is outsourcing its memory power. Here is a recent thing you might want to consider, especially if you are a gamer. Some streamers have made an unexpected discovery after spending countless hours wearing headphones. There's a headphone-shaped groove on top of their heads. Let's bring in science before we all start imagining our skulls reshaping like Play-Doh. It's highly unlikely that headphones are engaged in skull remodeling. According to experts, giving a human skull a makeover takes 297 pounds of pressure. So, what's really happening here? The headset is just giving a friendly nudge to our softer bits and pieces, causing a temporary dent that can be smoothed away. Another thing is about your phone holding style. Do you use your pinky to prop up the weight of your device, forming a sort of locked-in position? Ever wondered if this way of gripping might be causing some issues to your hand's well-being? Now, as smartphones keep getting bigger and better, a funny thing is happening. More and more people start noticing this smartphone pinky issue. You might have noticed a tiny groove forming on your pinky from being a loyal phone holder. Let's set the record straight once and for all. Holding your phone this way for long periods can actually bring some trouble. A common issue here is a trigger finger. Basically, bending your small finger to cradle the phone can cause it to get stuck in a flexed position, especially if you've got a trigger finger lurking beneath the surface. It's like a tiny finger traffic jam. Treatment often involves injections or minor procedures to release the tendon tangles. Your wrist might also decide to join the hand-hurting parade. This one causes numbness and tingling in your thumb and other digits. Plus, when your elbow is flexed, like when you're holding your phone to your ear, it can put pressure on the ulnar nerve, leading again to numbness and tingling in your ring and little fingers. Interestingly, apart from a tiny muscle called the arrector our fingers don't have muscles. So how in the world do we wiggle them? The muscles in our forearms are like puppeteers pulling the strings behind the scenes. These muscle maestros initiate finger movements, and here's where the real magic happens. Those movements are like secret messages zipping down to our fingers through tendons. Think of tendons as those trusty messengers delivering commands straight to our fingertips. How's that for finger wizardry?
The cornea is the only part of your body with living cells that doesn't have blood vessels. It gets nutrients and oxygen directly from the tear fluid on the outside, and the thick watery substance you have between the cornea on the inside, and also from the nerve fibers connected to the cornea. That's why contact lenses used to be a potential issue. The older ones were reducing oxygen supply, since the cornea mostly gets oxygen from the outside. This problem was solved, or at least reduced, when silicone hydrogel lenses came to the market. Some other parts of your body with no blood vessels are your nails, hair, outer skin layers, and tooth enamel. Did you notice your sweat sometimes smells of onions after your workout? You have nothing to worry about. There are two types of sweat glands in your skin. The first kind of glands are located on certain areas of your body, like the groin region and the armpits. They produce a specific oily fluid, which is a response to certain emotional experiences. Another type of sweat gland is way more common. They're distributed all over your body and are responsible for the specific sweat you get after the workout. The sweat cools your body down as it evaporates from your skin. It's 99% water, so it's practically odorless. Well, at least when it first leaves the pores and comes to the surface of your skin. But there are many types of bacteria on the human skin, and they feed on the nutrients in that sweat, together with skin flakes. One of the byproducts of this is specific chemicals, and their smell can sometimes strongly remind you of onion. You may have noticed you produce more saliva when you go for a run, especially if it's a short jog in cold weather. But if you're running a marathon and it's a nice warm day outside, you'll produce less saliva. It's your body trying to offset the drying effect since you breathe through your mouth way more. But your body becomes more dehydrated over longer periods, which is why it's trying to conserve water by reducing saliva production. Every training you do, no matter how intensive it is, also makes you secrete more of a specific type of protein. It makes the saliva more viscous and sticky, which is why you may feel like your mouth is dry way more after your workout. Humans see the world 15 seconds out of date, which means your brain constantly keeps you a little bit in the past. This way, it helps you stabilize your vision of the world around you. Your eyes receive a huge amount of visual information. Yep, literally millions of colors, shapes, and ever-changing motion wherever you turn. It's not an easy task for your brain to process all that. The visual world alters all the time because of changes in viewpoint, light, and the rest of the outer factors. Your visual input changes because you need to blink. Plus, your head, eyes, and your entire body are always in some sort of motion. Your brain has to establish a mechanism that can create illusory stability. It automatically smooths your visual input. It doesn't analyze every little visual snapshot. It's like a time machine. You actually perceive an average of things you saw in the past 15 seconds at any given moment. The brain pulls together objects so they appear more similar to each other. That's why it tricks you into believing you're in stable surroundings. If your brain kept you updated in real time, the world would feel like a very, very chaotic place with constant changes in movement, light, and shadow, which would probably feel like you were hallucinating all the time. Your bones are really strong, but your teeth, which we also consider as part of the skeletal system, are even stronger. That's because of the enamel, the hard outer layer of your tooth. The enamel keeps the tissue and the delicate nerves inside your teeth safe. You're basically burning calories while you're thinking. When you rest and don't engage in any particular activity except for the basics, which includes digesting, breathing, and keeping yourself warm, it's the stage where your brain uses up to 20 to 25% of the total energy of your body. That means your body will burn around 350 to 450 calories per day while pretty much doing nothing. We're not the only ones in the animal kingdom with such a mechanism. Some small mammals like the minuscule pygmy marmoset and the tiny tree shrew devote the same percentage of their total body energy to their brain. Most of the energy the brain burns is to help its cells, the neurons, to communicate with each other. They do it via chemical signals the brain transmits across synapses, those special cell structures. So, the brain directs a lot of energy towards synapses in order to make them work. Your brain never really rests. Even when you're sleeping, certain parts are active. So, your brain needs its fuel to work, and you're basically burning calories in your sleep. The more demanding mental tasks you take throughout the day, the more calories you burn. So, if you skip today's workout, solve some Sudoku. Do you like to rush with your ice cream? Sometimes it pays off, but if you do it often, you must know the feeling of brain freeze pretty well. It's a pretty intense and uncomfortable feeling that comes from the front or sides of your head right after you drink or eat something cold, such as a slushy drink, ice cream, or an ice pop. Some people even go through a similar sensation whenever they're exposed to cold air. Scientists are still not sure exactly why this happens, but one of the theories is the cold substance stimulates a cluster of nerves located at the back of the palate. Another theory says the blood vessels in the roof of the mouth and sinuses quickly constrict because the temperature in your mouth drops before they dilate again. Brain freeze is not something dangerous that you should be seriously worried about. And no, hanging over the table, groaning, or clasping your head in your hands won't help much. Some people like to sleep a lot. Hey, guilty as charged. But some have a certain condition called familiar natural short sleepers, which means they're kind of immune to sleep deprivation. About 1% of our population has it. They can fall short on sleep and feel pretty good about it. They're fine with sleeping for 6 hours per night. This amount would wreck the majority of people after a couple of nights. The human eye normally has 3 cones. That means we can recognize approximately 1 million different shades in the green, red, and blue spectrums of colors. But there are some people with a rare condition, so-called tetrachromats, that have 4 cones in their eyes. This allows them to see ultraviolet shades, which means they can distinguish 100 million distinct colors. Did you know your skeleton is all wet? I mean, your entire body mostly consists of water, up to 60%. That fluid is not only in your organs, muscles, and skin, it's in your skeleton too. Your bone mass is almost 1/3 water. There's this amazing hidden network a human body holds inside. Blood vessels are really small, but if you could line them all up, you'd get something huge. Your entire body boasts a network of 60,000 miles of blood vessels. One of the ways to keep your network healthy is by eating right. Have you ever wondered why our distant relatives, the primates, are so much stronger than us? In many ways, our bodies are very similar. Look at the chimp's muscle structure, for example. But our closest primate relatives are approximately 1.35 times stronger than us. The human body developed more slow-twitch muscle fibers compared to the rest of the primates. This type of muscle fiber is a less powerful one, but it lets us endure more than other primates and do things like foraging and hunting, activities that helped our distant ancestors to survive. That's also the reason why we can run a marathon. A monkey could never do it. But we'd still lose in a strength competition. Laughter is contagious. It's not just a metaphor. Researchers have found that strong emotions can make the brain activity of different people sink. Laughter is something science usually links with social creatures. People are almost 30 times more likely to laugh when in some social situations, hanging out with their friends or people they feel relaxed with. One of the theories says that you're probably going to join when you see your friend laughing because humans are empathetic beings. Your brain will release endorphins when you're laughing. These are special chemicals that make you feel safe and at ease. So we're not sure why exactly our laughter is contagious, but it feels really good, so... Join us on the bright side of life and laugh away.
Almost all of our body is covered with hairs, even if we don't notice them. They grow even in the belly button. Their purpose is to catch lint. Check it out, see? A single human hair can support 3.5 ounces of weight. That's how much 2 candy bars weigh. Our hair color is easily explained by genes. There's not more than 2% of people with natural red hair. They're followed by blondes and by all the varieties of brown shades. The vast majority goes to black hair, including very dark brown. Yeah, your hair can stop growing at a certain length. A hair usually grows from 2 to 7, so usually it doesn't exceed 42 inches. Well, tell that to this gal from China, who broke all the hair records with the longest hair ever. In 2004, her hair was 18 feet, 5.5 inches long. With age, your hair loses its natural color. It happens because keratin receives less pigment. As people grow older, the pigment cells in their hair follicles gradually vanish, and hair becomes gray. Some time passes and no pigment is produced at all. That's when hair turns white. The only part of the human body that doesn't get any nutrients from blood is the cornea of the eye. Instead, it's fed by tears and fluid in front of your eyes. A human eye has some resemblances to a car engine. They both need various liquids to perform properly. An engine needs gasoline and an eye needs tears. In order to work well, the tears should be thoroughly distributed all over the eye. That's why we blink up to 20,000 times a day. So, a lid is a bit of a windshield washer. We've got 2 really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. They're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection. That's why when the reflex is triggered, these muscles shut the eyes within about 100 milliseconds, no more than 0.1 seconds. We recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees because every single person has slight vision differences. But it's about 1/1,000,000th combinations on average, you see? The inability to distinguish colors, also known as color blindness, affects around 8% of males and 0.5% of females. But colors themselves aren't as stable and objective as they might seem. Multiple tests have shown that people experience colors differently, depending on many factors such as geographical location, language, and gender, to name a few. It means that you can enjoy the same sunset with your friend and see completely different colors without even knowing it. Just like fingerprints, your eye color is unique. It can even affect the way you perceive light and make your vision one of a kind. To understand how this is possible, you gotta figure out how the eye color is formed. This is the iris, the colored part of the eyeball. The iris contains pigmentation, and its content determines what eye color you have. Every human has a slightly different amount of pigmentation. That's why you won't find two people with identical eye colors. 3 specific genes in your body are responsible for melanin levels and determine pigmentation. Blue and green-eyed people have less melanin in their iris, and those who have more melanin have darker eye colors, like brown and hazel. Some rare people have beautiful, deep black eyes, but this is only an optical illusion caused by the abundance of melanin. Pure black iris doesn't exist in nature. Although these eyes look very dark, they're actually dark brown. Studies have proved that eye pigmentation impacts your vision. No matter how dark or light your eye color is, people with lighter eye colors are more sensitive to light, which may cause them to feel uncomfortable on sunny days. If you have a light eye color and have to squint when you go outside, don't forget to put on sunglasses. Your irises contain less pigment that serves as protection from the sun's rays. But since melanin acts like natural sunglasses, you have better night vision compared to dark-eyed people. On the contrary, if you have a darker eye color, your eyes can cope with bright light better during the daytime. Dark-eyed people should feel more confident while driving at night because they don't get blinded by car headlights that much. Your peripheral vision is almost completely black and white. It's because you have more color-detecting cones in the center of your retina than at the sides. Women can distinguish more colors than men because they have 2 X chromosomes, and men only have 1. Even if something is wrong with one of the chromosomes, a woman can still see colors correctly. That's why women are rarely colorblind. There must be at least some photos where you have red eyes. When the camera flash goes off, your eyes aren't prepared for such an influx of light. Your pupils remain dilated, which is why the light gets reflected off the red blood cells of the choroid. This is a layer of tissue at the back of your eye that nourishes your retina. The weird-looking flies you see right in front of your eyes every now and then are eye floaters. You see them because of tiny structural imperfections in one particular part of the eye that gets in the way of light. They get worse with age. You spend 10% of the time when you're awake with your eyes closed. It's all those times you're blinking. Humans are capable of using echolocation like bats and dolphins. With some training, you can find your way in complete darkness, analyzing the surroundings by sounds bouncing off objects. Don't need to practice that. About 6% of people can vibrate and rapidly shake their eyeballs back and forth. It doesn't mean something's not right with their eyes, it's just a unique trick they can perform. The main purpose of eyelashes is to shield your eyes and protect them from sand, moisture, dust, and debris in the air. Your eyelashes sense when something comes up too close to your eyes, like an insect flying towards you, and trigger your blink reflex. Blinking also helps when you need to flush out some tiny particles or debris stuck in your puncta. Those are small openings you have in your eyelids. That's where the tears get pumped out. Your eyebrows stop sweat from running directly into your eyes. Your skin there and the shape of your bones also work together to direct the sweat towards the sides of your face. Onions produce a special chemical irritant. It stimulates special glands in your eyes, causing them to release tears. The nose is probably one of the most underappreciated parts of the body. We wouldn't even be able to enjoy eating without it. About 80% of the taste of any food is thanks to the nose and its ability to recognize odors. If you hold your nose while eating, you will taste almost nothing. With no sense of smell, you're likely to recognize food mostly by texture, so an onion might seem no different than a big, refreshing apple. Scientists used to believe we could distinguish about 10,000 smells, but they were wrong. Recent research showed that people are actually able to distinguish between more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. Your nose doesn't just help you breathe and catch odors, it filters the air for sensitive throats and lungs. If we inhale dry air, the nose moistens it, cools it, and heats it if necessary. Also, the nose cleans the air of dirt. Your nostrils don't work with the same efficiency all the time. When you breathe, one nostril does most of the work, and they switch every couple of hours. 18% of people can move both ears at the same time, while 22% can move one ear at a time. People who can do it use weak vestigial muscles we got from our ancestor humans, who had this trait in common with cats. Some people can produce a roaring noise in their heads. All they have to do is tense their ears or jaws. There's a small muscle in the ear. It dampens loud sounds, like when you're chewing. But some people can flex that muscle, and that creates an audible rumble. Your teeth are the only part of your body that cannot heal itself.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.